virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, welcome back. 544 Dow futures. They are down triple digits right now. Well, a big change at the top of the world's biggest company late yesterday. Saudi Aramco replacing its chairman, Khalid Al-Falih, with the head of the Public Investment Fund. Now, Mr. Al-Falih, who gave no indication of knowing this when we interviewed him at OPEC back in June, will still remain as the Saudi energy minister. This move is seen by some as a way to further prep Aramco for an IPO, but others are surprised, given the new chairman has no oil or energy experience. Let's welcome in Halima Croft of RBC Capital Markets. Halima, your reaction to this news?
I mean, I don't think it's surprising, given the fact that Mohammed bin Salman really wants the IPO of Saudi Aramco on a very expedited timeline, and it's all about funding the Public Investment Fund. So it's not surprising it would bring in the head of the Public Investment Fund to be chairman of Aramco, given Mohammed bin Salman's broader vision. Now, this chairman doesn't have any energy industry experience, which is leading some people to scratch their heads. Again, I think it's about Mohammed bin Salman taking control of Aramco and really prepping it for IPO, again, on a very fast timeline.
Well, the CEO, Ahmed Nasser, is a lifetime oil and energy guy. So the functional, operational head of Aramco still remains
absolutely
an energy guy. But we know that these types of moves at the very highest level in the kingdom, in Saudi Arabia, don't come without some kind of reason.
Well, it's also part of a broader shakeup. I mean, we had a number of royal decrees over the weekend. We have a new head of the royal court who is also closer to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. They also split up the energy ministry. It was part of the energy industry and natural resources. They've basically split that up into two separate ministries. So it's part of a whole-scale sort of reorganization. But again, I think this is about getting the IPO done quickly. They want people who are very supportive of this process. And the question now will be, where do you list it?
Well, I mean, if we get it, I mean, this IPO, when you say quickly, I mean, this has been the IPO gift that keeps on giving.
I know.
Because it was supposed to happen last year, it was supposed to happen the year before. Do you think it actually does happen this time?
Well, I mean, I think that there's now a sense of urgency, and I think the fact that the bond issuance went better than expected, I think has given the leadership a sense that they can do it this time. They're looking to do a local listing in 2020 and then the international listing in 2021, but the real question is, where are they going to list it? Also the question of valuation, but where do you list this?
Well, some on their own exchange, I would imagine, the
Tadawul first.
Yeah, and there's been reports that Tokyo could be in the running.
Now,
is New York, you think, off the table?
Well,
it's hard. There's a lot of political reasons here why New York may not fly.
It's hard with the 9/11 bill and also with the NOPEC legislation floating around Congress. We've been told that the Crown Prince would like to do a New York listing. Certainly, President Trump has tweeted that he wants Aramco listed in the United States.
But that opens them up as to 9/11 bill. If people don't sort of track at this hour, the 9/11 bill would open Aramco up for lawsuits from 9/11 victims' surviving families, attaching the assets of a now U.S.-listed equity.
Yes. I mean, that has been the big roadblock in the United States. They had then thought about doing a London listing, but apparently now with all the Brexit concerns, London may no longer be in the running. Then it was Hong Kong, but the problems in Hong Kong have led to some concerns about listing in Hong Kong.
Isn't this amazing? You know, what you're doing right now is what you do better than anybody else out there, which is all these sort of things we talk about for our U.S. viewer, right? Oh, Brexit, it's a little bit this. Hong Kong, Think about this now from Aramco's perspective. All this is tying together. Brexit, UK doesn't look that good. Hong Kong now is a little bit shaky. New York's got its issues. Suddenly, you're running out. We've just listed basically the top stock markets in the world.
Right.
You're running out of big, important places to list your stock for what may be the biggest IPO in global history.
We'll be big in Japan.
I think you are big in Japan as well. How does this ultimately play out for Aramco? They go. I know you're not an equity analyst, but they go public. Let's say it happens. Does the world receive it favorably?
I mean, I think the really interesting question is not only what does it mean for Aramco, the question is what does it mean for Saudi's broader diversification play? This is about funding the public investment.
Vision 2030.
Well, the Vision 2030, the Public Investment Fund, their goal is to create the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. They're looking to have $2 trillion in assets by 2030. This is the cornerstone of that.
To go, is this an overstatement to go from a country that is oil-based, effectively, to a country that is
investment-based.
Investment-based with an oil backing.
Yes. They're essentially trying to do Abu Dhabi on steroids in terms of Abu Dhabi's massive sovereign wealth funds.
Damn you. Why? I wanted to say, you said it. Why couldn't I come up with that line? Abu Dhabi you said it. You buried the lead. Halima Croft, really interesting stuff. We appreciate
Thank
you
you
coming
so much
in.
for
Thank you
having
very
me.
much. All right, on deck. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson welcoming a new furry friend to 10 Downing Street this weekend, but is he in the doghouse himself with his own parliament? We'll give you the latest twists and turns on the Brexit showdown. Plus, the top 10 S&P 500 companies re-weighted just a couple of days ago. And there is something that happened that has never happened before, and it has to do with oil and gas. We'll have that for in your RBI coming up. You know what?
So, ServiceNow put your workflows in the cloud, huh?
Mm-hmm. This meeting of the Losers Club has officially begun.
In 3 days, I dreamt of you. It all ends. I craved you. In London. I missed you. Don't miss the final chapter.
We didn't stop it. We can't let it happen again.
Don't miss the end of It.
Hello?
It, Chapter 2. In cinemas Friday. Book tickets from your desktop. Rated 15.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try Click and Collect. Just go to Tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try Click and Collect at Tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow, because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the... Every Tuesday at KFC. Every Tuesday from August 12th to September 3rd at participating restaurants subject to availability.
What Ethan Allen, CEO, is doing now to protect his business and investors. Squawk on the Street, 10 a.m. Eastern.
There are so many new sources of data available to investors. Satellite imagery might tell you about inventory management and how things are moving around the world. One area of real interest is the cloud, when you can use it for large-scale transaction processing. Machine intelligence can help us to identify market manipulation, insider trading, and other sources of fraud in the markets. You're going to see fintech creating more global markets, more global transactions, and less friction in the system. This is the future of business. I watch CNBC.
All right, welcome back here to Worldwide Exchange. Time now for your executive recap. All the headlines you need in about 60 seconds. Let's go. Hurricane Dorian continues to batter the northern Bahamas with powerful winds and heavy rain and surf. Millions of people also along the southeastern coast of the United States are now bracing for the storm. Many have evacuated. The British pound dropping to its lowest level in nearly 3 years amid political uncertainty about a no-deal Brexit. Opponents of Prime Minister Boris Johnson want to pass legislation this week force him to seek a 3-month delay for the UK's exit from the EU. But if that happens, Johnson has indicated he would take steps to hold an early election. And in corporate news, Boeing's 737 MAX airplanes reportedly could be out of service through December due to friction between the company and international air safety regulators. The Wall Street Journal says a meeting between the company and regulators was cut short last month when Boeing did not provide technical details or answer questions about flight control computers. As a result, Boeing has to now resubmit documents about proposed software changes. All right, let's get now back to the markets and your money. Stock futures, they are down. Triple digits down, just about 200 points up, more than that, down 236 right now. So the losses have accelerated a bit as the futures traders start to come into their desks here on an early Tuesday morning. And joining us now is Chris Rupke. He is Managing Director and Chief Financial Economist at MUFG Union Bank. A lot of talk about the R word, recession, lately. The economy's still pretty good. You think we could talk ourselves into a recession?
Yeah, it's always possible. I remember the last recession. Remember, people did internet searches of the word recession to see how many hits it got and how much the talk was about recession. I tell you, almost everyone's extremely worried. It's not just recession, it's what is the bond market telling you? And there's many people, some of our customers over in Asia, that are very afraid that negative rates have hit Europe, Japan. Is it coming here to the United States? That's a question I get a lot.
Well, the other question, I think there's really just one question in the bond market, which is, are Is a 1.5% 10-year yield here and 15 trillion in negative yield, is that signal, and an inversion, is that signaling a recession, or is it simply signaling that a lot of people are interested in buying treasuries and it's not this great recession indicator like it has been in the past?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, don't forget, I mean, it's always thought, and Fed officials think this, that a lot of money is coming in from these lower yielding bond countries, and it's coming here to the U.S. But, you know, if they're over domiciled overseas, they have foreign exchange risk, right? I mean, that's always the issue. I don't know how much a flood of money is coming in. But, yeah, I had to laugh, or I don't know if laugh is correct. Remember on August 15th, stock market drops 800 points. Trump is tweeting crazy inverted yield curve. Well, the curve, it stopped inverting back there then August 15th. All last week, the curve was inverted. 2-year notes to 10-year bonds. And did you hear a peep? Maybe one day, a couple hours last week. The curve is inverted again. How come we're not screaming about recession?
Well, because we've never had this level of negative yielding debt, to your point. So maybe the buying is technical rather than simply some recession indicator. But isn't it true, and I think this is an important point, just because the yield curve is inverted doesn't mean recession. Isn't it more important how long it's inverted rather than the fact that it's now been inverted by 1 or 2 basis points for a couple weeks?
Well, you have to wonder about it. The last signal we got, 3-month bills to bonds, before the 2007-2009 recession. When did the signal indicate flash recession? 16 months in advance. I mean, is that an indicator? I mean, it's a year. You have a year and a half to get your affairs in order. So what's really important, I think, in the inversion is credit still being supplied to the economy? The thought is when the curve inverts, banks will stop lending. Right now, banks have not stopped lending.
No, they haven't. And Americans haven't stopped borrowing. And we're seeing, refinancing obviously is up. Our audience, CNBC, we've got the wealthiest audience in the world, right? So we've got people, financial professionals that are watching this program all day long. And we love you for it, by the way. But I wonder if out there in the United States, and I get out there as much as anybody else, I think, if anybody's saying, hey, Myrna, don't buy those jeans, don't buy that car, Bubba, because the yield curve is inverted. I don't think anybody's saying that. And I wonder if all the stuff we're seeing in the bond market is not going to trickle down to the U.S. consumer yet, if ever.
Yeah, I mean, well, part of it is it's the worry about the trade uncertainty, right? And those tariffs don't really get completely on. I mean, the real drag on the economy would be if the tariffs go to 30% on $540 billion, which, by the way, it's running $475 billion this year. We've already cut back on our imports due to the tariffs. So once we get up to full force tariffs, 30%, maybe you have an issue for the economy where there is a substantial drag on growth. Yeah. But that's a good 6 months away.
And I'm not minimizing it, but flat panel TVs, they were $2,000 3 years ago. The same TV is now $1,200 today, roughly. So you slap another 15% on that, you're still cheaper than what you were. That's why I just wonder how much it's going to really affect.
That's the other shoe to drop. I mean, is this really going to be a crisis, these tariffs? Is it going to bring about a recession?
Chris, thank you very much for joining us. Time now for your morning RBI, and the most random but interesting thing today is an incredible stat that has never happened before. That's why it's incredible. For the first time since it's been tracked decades ago, ExxonMobil is no longer a top 10 S&P 500 weighted company. S&P updated the rankings this weekend. In terms of market weight in the index, ExxonMobil is now 12th, bumped out by Visa. It's dropped as all oil and gas has deflated energy, now just 4.5% of the S&P 500. ExxonMobil out of the top 10 of the S&P 500 for the first time ever. Random, hopefully interesting. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Squawk Box begins right now.
Good morning. Futures are plunging after the latest round of U.S. and China tariffs took effect over the long holiday weekend. We knew it was coming, right? Well, they're down anyway. We get a live report from China. Crisis in the UK, the pound falling to its lowest level in nearly 3 years ahead of a Brexit showdown. And Hurricane Dorian stalling over the Bahamas as several U.S. states prepare for the worst but hope for the best. We'll take you live to look at the proposed path of the storm. We never know, though, right? It's Tuesday, September 3rd, 2019, and Squawk Box begins right now.
Live from New York, where business never sleeps, this is Squawk Box.
Good morning. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live at the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin along with Joe Kernan and Melissa Lee this morning. Becky's off. Our guest host for the hour, Savita Subramanian, is here. She is the head of U.S. equity and quant strategy at B of A Merrill Lynch. A lot going on as I would say today is like the beginning. Well, there's a lot of beginnings. Beginnings of the tariffs today also, but the beginning of like a sprint, a marathon.
To the end of the year.
To the end of the year.
Yeah.
Everybody's back to school this week and everything else. Let's show you U.S. equity futures at this hour. Show you what is going on right now. You're looking at the Dow looking like it would open down about 260 points. We got the NASDAQ down about 100 points. S&P 500 off about 31 points. Let's also show you Treasury yields at this hour. A lot of people focused on those these days. And right now, the 10-year at 1.477. For those looking for that inversion, the 2-year note at 1.496. And then let's show you what's going on overnight in Asia. As I mentioned, these tariffs going into effect today. You're looking at a mixed picture there. The Hang Seng off just marginally. Shanghai Composite up a bit. Nikkei up a bit as well. And then finally, European equities. We'll talk about the pound maybe at some point because it's dropped to some of its lowest levels. You're looking at red arrows across the board.
We are monitoring Hurricane Dorian. We'll take you live to the path of Dorian in just a few minutes. But in the meantime, we do want to talk about Hong Kong and what's going on there. The protests continue here. Let's get to NBC's Chris Livesay with the very latest. Chris.
Hi, Melissa. Yeah, the protests are now in their 13th week in Hong Kong, and this last one has already been the most violent. Over the weekend, we saw pitched battles between police and protesters who turned out to the streets by the tens of thousands. First, very peacefully, but then things got violent. Some of them threw bricks and bars, even Molotov cocktails at police. Police who responded with a volley of tear gas, a water cannon, and something we hadn't seen before, putting blue dye in the water in order to identify protesters afterwards. And then things got even uglier when they chased a group down into a subway station, hit them with pepper spray, their police batons, and according to Amnesty International, they even hit some innocent bystanders. All this while Beijing is sending some ominous signals down here to Hong Kong, saying in their state media, Xinhua, that, quote, the end is near for this protest movement. However, they didn't say exactly how that end was going to come about. So everyone's worried that they might respond with drastic measures. Meanwhile, these protests are still going on. Right now, as we speak, there are thousands of protesters gathered in front of the central government here in Hong Kong. Melissa?
Thank you, Chris Livesay in Hong Kong for us.
Right now to trade where the latest round of U.S. and China imposed tariffs took effect over the weekend. China now issuing an official complaint about the United States with the WTO. Eunice Yoon joins us now. Fill us in on everything, Eunice, and anything you might be hearing as well behind the scenes, if there is anything. I know it's been a while since we spoke. Seems like ages.
It seems like ages, but I think it was only a couple of days ago. But, Joe, I'm coming to you from a town where it is Christmas 365 days a year. This is the eastern coastal city of Yiwu, and it's known to make roughly half of the world's Christmas decorations. So the manufacturers here always meet with buyers who come from all over the world, including the United States, who end up, the manufacturers here end up selling Americans all sorts of artificial trees and Christmas ornaments. And the buzz here has been that for the most part this year, they're doing okay, that orders have been priced and shipped already. But what they're worried about is next year. Some of the folks that we've been speaking to here say that they think that orders could drop by as much as 10%, or at least by 10% for next year, because the weekend tariffs that kicked in. Also, people are worried about the tariffs that are going to come into place in December. And so because this is such a low margin business, the talk here has been about how are they going to survive. So there is some flexibility in the way that the manufacturers are thinking. Instead of, say, for example, moving production outside of the country, there's been a lot of talk about where they could move the production within the country. That in rural China, for example, the cost there to set up a factory is about a tenth, they're saying, when you look at the land alone compared to here, which is on the coast and is much richer. So another thing that they're talking about here is selling to new markets. So what I found interesting was that a lot of the manufacturers that we've been speaking to said that only about 10 to 20% of their sales go to the United States. And they sell a lot to Europe. They sell a lot to Latin America. And they're not only thinking about expanding their businesses there, but also of looking for new markets in the Middle East as well as Southeast Asia. Now, looking forward, there isn't a lot of optimism about the confrontation that they're seeing between the U.S. and China. So because of that, they're thinking that for the next 1 to 2 years, they're just really going to have to make some of these changes and also shorter term work out with some of their customers in the U.S. exactly how they're going to be splitting some of the tariffs. Because like I said, it's a low margin business. So there's been a lot of concern here about some of the costs being pushed onto their books when they feel that at the end of the day, the retailers as well as the U.S. customer are also going to have to share in these costs. Guys?
Eunice, just in terms of what is happening with the September meeting and the overtures going back and forth, body language, in your view, who wants to deal more after? I mean, we try and figure it out every day. We have a different notion about who needs it more. Where are we right now on that, you think?
Well, I mean, just if you're asking the way the Chinese look at it or the way that I see it in the Chinese state press, I mean, a lot of the rhetoric that we hear here is that the U.S. is the one that's going to buckle and needs this deal more because of the politics that's at play, with President Trump also eyeing what's happening in the stock market, that his concern is about the economy and the potential for a recession, and that because President Xi Jinping does have more staying power. And also, we talked about this last week, there's a big anniversary that's coming up, the 70th anniversary
October,
of the founding of the People's Republic of China, and on October 1st. And so because of that, there isn't a lot of room for China to really show that it's weak, and so that it would be willing to continue to eat a lot of the tariffs and allow their manufacturers here to eat the tariffs as well and try to find other ways to survive until something comes up between the two.
Well, the stock market that you just mentioned is you need to tell people over there we're actually not far from the highs. So I don't know whether that maybe the president might be ready for another round of at another 10% on. When the market, I'm talking about tariffs. When the market gets back to where it was, I think he feels emboldened that. Here we go again, and I'll try to inflict some more pain.
Yeah.
When we said how many days to the end of the year.
That's the kind of thing, though, that creates, Joe, a lot of uncertainty, and I think that's what a lot of the manufacturers here are worried about. And what I also thought was interesting here is that they're saying that they're not really getting as much help from the government, the Chinese government, as you would think. That the government has made a lot of announcements about how they're going to help, but then in actual fact, they haven't seen any money. And in fact, one manufacturer said that it's actually gotten harder for them to get some loans because some of the banks have said that, well, you're working with U.S. companies, and U.S. companies are a risk, so we're not going to grant you that loan. So that is something that they're dealing with here. And another point is that the Chinese renminbi has been weakening. But the people that we talk to here say that they still see a floor for how much weaker the renminbi could go. Yeah. That on the one hand, it is going to be helpful, and the government appears to be trying to help them in some way. But at the end of the day, the government also has other reasons why it wouldn't want the renminbi to weaken that much further. So they said that they're getting limited help in that way as well.
I was informed of it's something like 460 days to the election, or 480 days to the election. My son did the math on that. Yep. And that's when we were talking about the days to the end of the year. That's not that far off. And the first nominating events in Iowa are like 3 or 4 months off. That's really close. And there's a big debate where everybody's finally together.
Yep.
I don't think there's going to be a lot of togetherness
next week
moments, but there's only 10. Your mayor did not. He's not.
Nope.
Actually, your mayor.
My mayor is going to be there. Who?
De Blasio. You're a New Yorker now.
I've never spent a night here. Are you trying to like get me to pay taxes here? I've never spent a night here.
I thought you're coming to the city.
I've never slept over here. That's an apartment full. He's
trying to bring it out on air.
When I mentioned him and his taxes once, I thought you were going to have an actual coronary because you set up the LLC and everything. But
let's talk about the hurricane, though.
Let's move on.
5 states now under a state of emergency as Hurricane Dorian batters the Bahamas. NBC's Jay Gray is in the projected path of the storm. He joins us now from Savannah, Georgia.
Hey there, right in the middle of that projected path if this storm decides to move. At this point right now, continues to linger over the Bahamas, and you have to feel for so many there who have taken a beating from this storm for more than a full day. But once it does start to target the U.S. coastline, it looks like at this point it's just going to mirror the coast and kind of move upward. Could make landfall in North Carolina sometime late in the week. Here we've seen evacuations in place, sandbags also blocking where they believe the water is going to go. The port is closed. Most of the businesses are closed here. Everybody prepared and cooperating, it seems, except for Dorian at this point. If it does begin to move, which the National Hurricane Center says it will later today, we would likely see the storm off the coast here sometime late Wednesday into Thursday morning. And guys, just because this thing's not going to make landfall, it's going to be close enough to the shoreline that it's going to still cause hurricane-type conditions really all along the coast. Strong winds, heavy rain, storm surge in some areas, beach erosion could be a big problem as well. So, again, a little time left for those who want to prepare or evacuate, but that window should start to close later this morning into the early afternoon.
Okay. NBC's Jay Gray, it's great to see you. Stay safe, and we will check back with you in the next hour.
Coming up, Brexit uncertainty driving the pound to a 3-year low. We'll tell you what is happening in Parliament that could move the markets over the next couple of days. And as we head to break, take a look at the biggest pre-market winners and losers in the Dow.
This CNBC program is sponsored by SunTrust Bank.
With Rapid Insurance on Vodafone Business, we'll get a replacement phone to you within 4 hours. So if you should... Oh, no. Or even... Just get in touch and we'll...
Your replacement phone, sir?
Your phone replaced within 4 hours with our Rapid Insurance. Available on our new and limited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone Business.
Max download upload speeds apply to data. Coverage may vary. Unlimited and rapid terms at vodafone.co.uk/terms.
Oh, I found one of our new Vauxhall Griffin editions.
Yes. What comes as standard?
Standard? Well, alloy wheels, sat-nav, aircon, DAB radio, Bluetooth, smartphone projection and USB connection.
Wow. Is that everything?
Sorry, forgot the colour touchscreen.
Buy a new Griffin edition, Adam, Astra, Corsa or Mocha X Plus and get a whole host of features as standard. The Griffin edition range. All Griffin, no bull. Visit your nearest retailer now. Vauxhall, British brand since 1903. Participating retailers only. Limited units while stocks last.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to Squawk Box this morning. IPO news just breaking on Smile Direct Club, and Leslie Picker joins us right now. Leslie.
Hey, Andrew, that's right. Smile Direct Club setting a price range that it plans to market shares to investors. They plan to offer stock between $19 and $22 a share. Guys, that implies an IPO size of more than $1 billion, about $1.2 billion at the midpoint of the range. In a banner year for IPOs, this would be one of the biggest. The market cap at this price range is about $8 billion at the midpoint. That represents nearly triple the $3 billion valuation the company garnered in a private fundraising round just about a year ago. Today's amended S-1 filing effectively kicks off the company's roadshow, where they'll go around the country meeting with investors to sell stock. Certainly a large IPO to look at to kick off September, guys.
What is the biggest question regarding Smile Direct and its business model?
I think a lot of people are looking at exactly how this direct-to-consumer model works in terms of regulations, because obviously they work in a teledentistry model. So each state that they operate in, they have to get the appropriate approvals to do so. They operate as such that they have a group of orthodontists that they work with and dentists that they work with. And they pay those orthodontists and dentists to be a part of their network. And then, but they need to make sure that they have the appropriate regulatory approvals to do so.
Leslie, thank you. Leslie Picker. We are watching the pound this morning falling below $1.20 to its lowest level since October 2016 on new Brexit drama. Opponents of Prime Minister Boris Johnson want to pass legislation this week to force him to seek 3-month delay to the UK's exit from the EU. Here's what the Prime Minister said last night.
I want everybody to know there are no circumstances in which I will ask Brussels to delay. We're leaving on the 31st of October, no ifs or buts. We will not accept any attempt to go back on our promises or scrub that referendum.
A group of lawmakers plan to try to seize parliamentary time on Wednesday to pass legislation that would force Johnson to ask for an extension. If that happens, Johnson has indicated he would take steps to hold an early election.
All right, joining us now, Julia Coronado, founder of Macro Policy Perspectives. And our guest host for the hour is Savita Subramanian, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch. Just overall, Savita, we'll start. Welcome as our guest host. But you're torn. You're neutral.
Torn, yeah.
You're torn between dovish central banks versus recession concerns in the trade war. But this is what we talk about all the time.
Absolutely.
So that just makes you like sort of just not sure which way to go.
Well, look, I think the market is a buy because of the yield that it offers. And I think the thesis right now is we're likely to stay in this low interest rate environment for longer. And if you look at the S&P 500, 60% or more of the stocks offer a dividend yield that's greater than the 10-year. This is like a weird, wild world that we're living in. And we've been in it for the last 10 years, and the markets continue to grind higher. So our advice to investors in these uncertain times is look for stocks with a sustainable dividend yield where you can meet your income requirements and you're protected on the downside. But, in terms of the S&P 500 from a price perspective, it's hard to say. I mean, don't fight the Fed. We've got a very accommodative central bank policy. We've got accommodative central banks all over the world. But we've also got trade friction. We've got companies in paralysis mode. CapEx spending has declined. So I think there's a lot of puts and takes here, which kind of forces us into these yieldier areas of the market.
Julia.
Yes.
Yield curves. We're inverted.
What are they telling us?
Well, they're inverted again. We've also for about a month now we've been explaining this time it's different so many different ways. It always makes me uncomfortable. It's always an uncomfortable thing to say. So
it is uncomfortable.
The latest is in the journal B1 bonds big swings amped up by a market strategy, and it's just simply saying that all these people, all these institutions that need yields, they're on autopilot. And they scoop up bonds because that's what their pre-existing risk models and investment hedging strategies tell them to do. And I mean, they do have money.
Price insensitive
they
is
have
the suggestion.
Right. So,
it's not a signal.
Does it mean? Is that true? Does this not? Is there a recession being forecast by the bond market?
Well, it certainly is a warning signal. I don't think there's any way you could look at it any other way. If the fact that people are comfortable with those kinds of investment strategies tells you something about the riskiness of the economic environment. And we can look at the economic data and the global economic data, the UK PMI, all of the PMIs are looking pretty recessionary. We've got a lot of political uncertainty from Brexit to China to the US. That's only going to intensify as we move closer to the 2020 election here. That just reinforces the paralysis that you cited in terms of the CapEx willingness to invest and hire.
Small businesses are supposedly being...
Everybody,
they're getting,
from small to large businesses.
You can see it now, the trade war.
Yeah, so of course the large global supply chain businesses can see it most clearly. But yes, even smaller businesses now can see that what are the prospects for growth? Where am I going to get my growth? It's harder and harder to see.
So I think the one area of strength remains the consumer. I mean, that's the bright spot. And we've had mini recessions over the last 10 years. We've had an industrials recession. It wasn't really that mini. It was actually pretty big.
In 2015.
In 2015.
Yes.
But the consumer and tech held
Carried
up
us
strong
through.
enough to carry us through. I mean, do you see that type of scenario playing out where we could potentially see a manufacturing recession, but the consumer keeps us going?
So without a doubt, that is a dynamic we're going to see, that we're going to see a manufacturing recession. We're already there globally. The U.S. is moving in that direction. The U.S. consumer has been much more cautious this time, which is a good thing. They're more stable. They haven't over-borrowed, over-leveraged. There's not a lot of pullback needed. So that is the hope of avoiding a recession. If we're going to do it, it's on the back of a stable consumer, a domestic service sector-oriented stability that offsets some of these global headwinds. It still is a possibility. I think it's a clear possibility. I'm not forecasting a recession yet. I think the probabilities are about 40%.
No one
ever forecasts.
They don't, but they go up in there. No, I was going to say that they go from 30 to 40.
Well, yeah, and that's what the yield curve is telling us too, right?
They go from 30 to 40. That just seems like useless information. I mean, I don't know how to feel about.
And yet our clients ask us for these probabilities. So
I mean, okay.
Question about the CapEx.
It's still 60% that you don't get one.
Yeah, and that would be the story of the U.S.
So instead of 70%, it's 60%.
And I think you mentioned also the accommodative central banks. It's not like they're frozen. They're doing something to offset
it. They're doing everything they can.
And that has an impact on market sentiment, and that's an important piece of the
puzzle.
puzzle.
When you guys talk about the slowdown in CapEx, though, do you think that's a function of China, or do you think that's going to be a function of the election? And how are they interrelated?
Or both, yeah, both. I mean,
I think it's more China, actually.
I think it's more China?
Yeah, because I think that we're in an environment where the global supply chain has been massively disrupted. You've got companies, moving sourcing to other regions of the world. You've got paralysis mode in terms of where do I set up my new plant? And, every day there's a different number bandied around about tariffs. I think it's an environment where it's really hard to plan anything for the future.
And to that, I would add, even before the trade war intensified, we were seeing a global manufacturing slowdown. China's been the engine of global manufacturing. They are seeing growth slow on a structural basis. And that's a reality that companies are going to have to grapple with and reorient their business models towards.
All right, thank you. Julia and Savita will be with us for the rest of the hour.
Okay, coming up, we're going to talk Jobs Week. It is Jobs Week in America, and we're going to get you ready for Friday's very big number. Well, we'll see whether it's big or not. The Paycheck Small Business Report. That is next. Back in a moment.
Companies need to ask themselves, what is the right path to accelerate growth?
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
From the moment I saw you, the last of the litter, I knew you were the one, and would soon hear the pitter-patter of tiny paws on our kitchen floor and tiny scratches on the bedroom door. You might sometimes be mischievous, sometimes be shy, but I know I found love in those kitten cat eyes. Join the free VIP Kitten Club from Pets at Home for advice and exclusive offers, including 10% off your first shop in store. Visit petsathome.com/kitten club or join in store. T's and C's apply.
Strings and things. Strings and things. Strings and things. Strings and things. Strings and things and strings and things. Strings and things. Strings and things.
Now there's a whole range of strings and things called strings and things, including cheese strings, yollies, and new cheese shapes. Find them all in the cheese and yogurt aisle.
Strings and things.
People have always told me I can be a bit wary of modern things.
Very true.
So when Jane suggested selling the house with purple bricks, I weren't happy.
No, you weren't.
You see, I don't like technology. I don't like the internet. I don't like moving house. I don't like their adverts. I don't like purple.
Luckily, I don't listen to him, and our estate agent Emma were perfect. She gave us her actual mobile number. She was always available.
Fine, they were great. Still don't like purple.
Purple bricks. You'll be totally sold.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing services cost extra. See website for more details.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. It is a very big week for the economy leading up to Friday's August jobs report. Kicking it off today, the Paychex August small business report being released. Joining us right now to go over it is Marty Musi. He is CEO of Paychex. Good morning, Marty.
Good morning.
To the extent that your report is going to help us sort of decipher what we may hear later in the week, help us with it and tell us what's happened in this past August.
Yeah, Andrew, I think what we've seen is a slight decline from July in the small business. These are businesses under 50 employees, down about 1% from last year. Still seeing job growth, but less. And I think what it's telling us is that small businesses in particular are a little bit cautious. Because of the tariff issue, they can't change their suppliers if they're from China as easily. They also don't have as much pricing control, so they're a little bit more cautious about that. And of course, it continues to be a tough labor market to hire, and particularly for small businesses, it's always a little bit tougher for them to hire and draw people. But you
think it's a tariff story? I mean, and what do you expect come the end of this month, for example, given the new tariffs that are going on today?
Yeah, I think our research shows that the majority of small businesses are not impacted by the tariffs. So I think it's still mostly that it's a tight labor market and tough for them to hire. But I do think that those businesses, small businesses that are impacted by China, it is more difficult for them to change suppliers. It's also, they don't have as much pricing control, so it does have some impact on them.
Hourly wages, what happened?
Yeah, wages were up about 2.6% over last year. The larger businesses, when you get up closer to 50 employees, they're closer to 3% wage increase, so pretty consistent with what we've seen. We are seeing wages rise a little bit for these small businesses because they have to try to attract the employees in a tough market. But I also see you have owner-only businesses, and they don't give themselves wage increases, particularly in a tight economic market.
Marty, we're showing a map right now on the screen in terms of where some of that growth is taking place. The South remains first among regions in employment growth. The West leading regions in hourly earnings growth. Why is that?
Well, you're seeing more minimum wage increases, in particular in the West. And I think to get the employees, you have to raise the wage rate in the West. When you think about minimum wage in the West, it averages around $11.50. In the South, it averages around $8 still. So you still have lower wages in the South, but more people, and you're attracting a little bit more job growth, particularly in construction. and leisure and hospitality and other services.
Okay, Marty, we got to go. By the way, if you want a job, Tennessee is now the top state for small business growth. And if you want the best top wage, Illinois remaining the top state for wage growth. Marty, great to see you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andrew.
You bet.
All right, coming up, there's a shakeup at Saudi Aramco. We'll tell you what the management change means for the planned IPO. That's next. Plus, tariff fallout. We'll tell you what the new round means for Apple. And as we head to break, here's a look at Friday's S&P 500 winners and losers.
Executive Edge is sponsored by AT&T Business.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow, because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the... Every Tuesday at KFC. Every Tuesday from August 12th to September 3rd at participating restaurants subject to availability.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
I'm getting strawberry notes and a flutter of sweetness without adding sugar. Clever. It is. Yazoo Kids uses a lactose-reduced milk that enhances flavour without adding sugar or artificial sweeteners. Milky deliciousness and packed full of goodness. Very clever. Strawberry Yazoo Kids supports change for life. Yazoo, shake it up! Contains naturally occurring sugars. Milk is a source of calcium, which is needed for the maintenance of normal bones.
The biggest cat in the world was longer than a cricket bat. Think that's big? Tonight, the Euro Millions jackpot is an enormous £114 million. 114 million! Now that's big.
Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Amazing starts here.
Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Welcome back. You're watching Squawk Box, live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square.
Good morning. U.S. equity futures at this hour were back in the red after last week. We rebounded from the big red we had the week before. But we're still, what are we, 2-3% off the highs, maybe 4? 3.33%. And it was a big shakeup. Saudi Aramco late yesterday, the oil giant replacing its chairman, Khalid Al-Falih, with the head of the Public Investment Fund. This move seen by some as a way to further prep Aramco for an IPO, but others are surprised. Given the new chairman has no oil or energy experience, Al-Falih will still remain the Saudi energy minister, but will no longer oversee industry and mineral resources, which was separated into another.
I don't understand this one because...
What is it? I don't have...
I'll tell you what the issue is. Originally, the idea was to signal to the country and to the world that somehow this was a separation. This was now going to be a more industrial or business-focused endeavor. Having said that, the head of PIF, which is the Public Investment Fund, is as entwined with the Saudi government as the chairman of the energy, the minister of energy. It's not like they all work for the government. So I'm not sure exactly what the signals are supposed to mean for those who are trying to divine.
I'm not sure that they can actually have a management slate that is completely devoid of any government ties. Given
It's all connected to the government.
Right,
so
right,
I don't really
right.
understand.
Yeah, I don't think
what
there's
this
a way
is.
of
I
not.
actually think this probably is about who's in and who's out, meaning
in favor. You mean
who's in
it's the
favor with
government,
MBS and who's not in favor with
Yeah.
MBS, as opposed to this idea that it's being spun as a signaling to the marketplace. Meantime, we got a lot more coming up on Squawk this morning. Apple among the companies affected by the latest round of tariffs that went into effect Sunday. We're going to discuss what that means for the tech giant ahead of its expected announcement of a new iPhone. I think people think it's September 10th. Is that next Tuesday? Stay tuned. You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC.
At Synchrony.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow, because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the? Every Tuesday at KFC. Every Tuesday from August 12th to September 3rd at participating restaurants subject to availability.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
I'm getting strawberry notes and a flutter of sweetness without adding sugar. Clever. It is. Yazoo Kids uses a lactose-reduced milk that enhances flavour without adding sugar or artificial sweeteners. Milky deliciousness and packed full of goodness. Very clever. Strawberry Yazoo Kids supports change for life. Yazoo, shake it up! Contains naturally occurring sugars. Milk is a source of calcium, which is needed for the maintenance of normal bones.
I didn't choose you. You chose me. When you broke from the crowd and pawed at my knee. Soon you'll be feeling right at home. You'll be a bit unsure, but you're free to roam. What's good to chew? What's nice to nibble? Wet food, dry food, tin food, kibble? You might sometimes be cheeky, not always wise. But I know I found love in those puppy dog eyes. Join the free VIP Puppy Club from Pets at Home for advice and exclusive offers, including 10% off your first shop in store. Visit petsathome.com/puppy club or join in store. T's and C's apply.
Make sure you're uni ready with our huge range of practical essentials and home from home comforts and get 10% off for a limited time. T's and C's and exclusions apply. Dunelm, the home of homes.
The biggest cat in the world was longer than a cricket bat. Think that's big? Tonight, the Euro Millions jackpot is an enormous £114 million. 114 million! Now that's big.
Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Amazing starts here.
Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
First world problem number 346.
Well, you know, people might think I'm exaggerating, but since Virgin Atlantic announced their sale, I can't sleep. 1 minute my head is in New York, the next I'm searching for shows in Vegas. I can't stop. So many choices. South Africa, the Caribbean, California. My search history is a total mess. Oh, I might need to bring it up with my life coach.
Seriously? Get a flight. Bing bong. The Virgin Atlantic sale is now on. Visit virginatlantic.com and fly direct from London.
New tariffs went into effect Sunday night, and among those most exposed, Apple, which is down pre-market trade. Joining us now to discuss, Chris Caso, analyst at Raymond James. Chris, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
This round of tariffs that's impacting Apple, it's a much smaller slice of products than what could hit Apple come December 15th. So how should we think about the impact on Apple of this first round?
I don't think it's going to have a big impact right now. Again, they delayed some things to December so that it avoided the Christmas rush. Also this year, there were some tax changes in China earlier the year that have benefited them. So, there's been a little push and pull. Obviously, the tariff stuff has been very difficult to handicap at this point.
So from your understanding, if I'm buying an watch today, right. Do I see any price increase? And if I don't see a price increase, who is paying the tariff?
Right. So there's no price increase right now. Obviously, you have the event next week where they'll announce new products and they'll set pricing for that product. And you'd have to imagine that Apple would take that into consideration when they set the pricing. Because usually what Apple does, they set the pricing on the launch of new products, and it's very rare they change it. Again, one of the things they changed earlier this year was in China, where they did some price reductions, which was really atypical for them.
So that whole thing, the product announcements on September 10th, is that just a way to keep ASPs high, to keep margins high by introducing new products what they can introduce at a higher price point and absorb the tariffs into?
Well, it's possible, and that's probably the biggest wild card. Whenever you have these new Apple events, there's very little mystery about what actually gets announced because there's been so many leaks. So we know there's 3 new phones coming, there's a new camera on the back, not much more. But pricing is one of the things that we certainly will watch, for one, because of the tariffs, and other because Apple seemed to have taken a more flexible approach this year as compared to the past. And perhaps it was some admission that the price of the new phones was too high.
Is there anything exciting coming next week? I like this. I love this stuff. I'm a gadget guy.
Right.
So is there anything I should be excited about?
Well, not really. And, I say, years past, gadget guys like us, that event was sort of like the Super Bowl.
Yes.
And it's sort of been like the Super Bowl now, which is not that interesting the last couple of years. And so there's very little mystery. And this is the issue for right now. There's not a lot of incentive to buy a new phone this year. But, and I said, we got positive a couple months ago on, very early ahead of next year's 5G cycle. I think that's where it's going to be interesting.
So nothing interesting in terms of this phone. You might alienate customers further because the price is much higher on this new batch of phones. How does this set up Apple for the holiday season? Last holiday season, Apple had a pretty dismal one, and it also saw weakness in China. What we're seeing in China so far is we're seeing a place where PMIs are in contraction, where retail sales in July for Hong Kong, because of all the protests, are down 11%. I mean, how does this all factor in for what you're forecasting?
Yeah, I think the next 6 months are going to be difficult 6 months for them. I frankly think that's very widely expected at this point because everybody knows what's coming out.
Meaning it's in the stock price.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's no surprise to investors. There are not very high expectations for this particular product launch. And in fact, I think probably the tougher time as you go into the calendar first quarter of the year, after you get through the holiday season, and then you have a stall ahead of a new batch of phones in next fall. But again, I think people understand that now. And at some point, our view, when we upgraded the stock 2 months ago, was that, we understand we have that difficult 6-9 month period coming. I think everyone understands it. And, our view is we'd rather be early on the call rather than maybe late on the call. And again, the biggest swing factor here is potentially what happens with the trade situation. That's impossible to predict.
In terms of the December 15th tariffs, how does that hit EPS, if it does at all in your model?
Yeah, we don't know just yet. And again, I think right now it's way too early to even kind of start putting that into numbers because, between now and December, we could have, we probably will have, a couple dozen tweets between now and then that might change things.
I get that, but if you're getting positive on the stock, shouldn't you have an understanding of what the worst case scenario impact would be?
Well, and I think we have to see what happens, what they do with pricing on this particular launch, and to understand, how much gets absorbed by suppliers, how much gets absorbed by Apple themselves. And again, when they set the prices on September 10th, that will tell you what's going to happen for this entire cycle, because it's very rare for them to change prices through the cycle.
But they did it for the last cycle. They changed prices, right?
And they did it in China and some other emerging markets, which was very unusual for them. Now, one of the things they potentially do is, just not change prices at all. and absorb them. And
we'll
then
see it in the margins.
And then you'll see it in the margins. But one of the things interesting with Apple, too, is the margins on iPhones have already come down pretty considerably. And that's probably given them some flexibility with pricing. Again, part of the positive thesis as you go into next year is that they're going to have more compelling phones. They probably have some flexibility to put, some price increases in for a 5G phone as well, which could start to move margins in the other direction for iPhone.
Why are margins coming down, giving it more flexibility in price? I would think it gives it less flexibility.
Well, again, in this particular year, for this year, the cost of the phones is not going up. The cost of the phones most likely come down. Things like memory prices have come down, which gives them some cost benefit. When you go to next year, the 5G phone, the pricing will go up again.
Right.
But the other problem that Apple has had, which is something the 5G phone will fix next year, is mix. And the biggest issue you've had is not necessarily the prices of the phones themselves, but the fact that people are buying fewer of the high-end phones and more of the lower-end phones, which is the biggest driver of margins for iPhones. So as you go to next year, if more people buy the equivalent of, the 10S and the Max as opposed to, the N-1, the last year phone. That's a big factor in both ASPs as well as margins for iPhone. And I think that's what's going to happen as you go to next year. So again, you got to get past this next 6 to 9 month period where the mix is probably lousy. You got some pressure from tariffs and that. But when you go to next year, at least you've got several things lined up which could act as a positive catalyst.
Do you think we'll ever have transparency or you'll have transparency as to who exactly is paying the tariffs? Or will we have to wait until a full quarter comes out and you see what the margins are and you see how it translates?
Yeah, I think, Apple, of course, they've given much less disclosure right now. So even ASPs and units on iPhone, we have to guess ourselves now too. So it makes it difficult to figure that out.
All right, Chris, thanks for coming by. Chris
Thank
Queso.
All right, coming up, investing in times of volatility. We're going to talk to power player Mark Ein and find out where he's putting money to work. As we head to break, here's a quick check on what's happening in the European markets right now, and as you might imagine, they're in the red.
ServiceNow put our workflows in the cloud. This changes everything.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow. Because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the... Every Tuesday at KFC. Every Tuesday from August 12th to September 3rd at participating restaurants subject to availability.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
I'm getting strawberry notes and a flutter of sweetness without adding sugar. Clever. It is. Yazoo Kids uses a lactose-reduced milk that enhances flavour without adding sugar or artificial sweeteners. Milky deliciousness and packed full of goodness. Very clever. Strawberry Yazoo Kids supports change for life. Yazoo, shake it up! Contains naturally occurring sugars. Milk is a source of calcium, which is needed for the maintenance of normal bones.
From the moment I saw you, the last of the litter, I knew you were the one, and we'd soon hear the pitter-patter of tiny paws on our kitchen floor and tiny scratches on the bedroom door. You might sometimes be mischievous, sometimes be shy, but I know I found love in those kitten cat eyes. Join the free VIP Kitten Club from Pets at Home for advice and exclusive offers, including 10% off your first shop in store. Visit petsathome.com/kitten club or join in store. T's and C's apply.
Make sure you're uni ready with our huge range of practical essentials and home from home comforts and get 10% off for a limited time. T's and C's and exclusions apply. Dunelm, the home of home.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. U.S. equity futures at this hour are about where we've seen what would you call it? Pretty good week last week. 200 points, not great. It kind of feels like a Monday, after a 3-day weekend. But it's manageable. What is that? It's not even 1%, right? But we're giving some back. And it is definitely with what's happening. The yield curve's inverted. Pound is at multi-year lows below 120. Let's talk, though, investing in times of volatility. Mark Ein joins us now. He's CEO at Capital Investment Corp, and he's at the forefront of investing in tennis, as well as esports. So it's a good time to have you on, given what's happening. Nadal, I guess you saw there was a little bit of a scare. That former champion, Cilic, right?
Yeah, Cilic is tough. He can beat anyone on a given day, but Rafa showed why he's in top form.
Yeah, the last two sets, 6-1, 6-2 or something. So not everyone knows about your involvement, I think, in team tennis, and that... You trying to make money, or is it just your love of tennis combined with being a venture capitalist?
Yeah, I mean, I love the sport. I think it's a great sport. I think it's a great sport for kids, and anyone can play it, and male and female. So I'm a real big proponent of it. I've invested in team tennis for the last 12 years, and then we bought the Washington, D.C. tournament earlier this year, which just concluded in August. So it's a great sport. I do think there's some good business opportunities in the sport as well, but it really is passion.
I mean, I know you want to be close to your businesses and stuff, but you're a ball boy at the tournaments still, or is that?
So I actually was a ball kid.
Oh, you were?
I was when I was a kid.
This is when you were young. Okay, all right.
I was a kid, and then the tournament was potentially going to leave town.
At
and
that tournament, right?
I was at that exact tournament. So actually, I had a meeting with the ball kids this year before our finals, and they said they only have one request. They want me to be a ball kid again next year. And so I agreed to do it. And then someone chimed in that they're trying to get ARP to be a sponsor, and maybe we could do a tie-in with that. And so maybe we'll do that next year.
I mean, I love those kids because they want that ball.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine if a kid is like not really that into it? And he's like, like barely going over. I mean, that would be, put that on SNL maybe.
It's actually a great way for young kids to get to be part of the sport and get up close. But it really did inspire my love for tennis. Having that involvement and actually a lot of people, both pros like Roger Federer was a ball kid, and a lot of people get involved later in life started as a ball kid.
What do you think you have to do to make tennis even more popular? Like, what's holding it back? If you could change something about the game right now, what would you do?
So one of the great benefits of tennis is all the traditions in it. I think if you really want to make it more widely appealing, you'd probably change things up a bit more. Maybe make it a bit shorter. Make the sets a bit shorter.
Set shorter.
Make the set shorter. The matches a little bit shorter. Create more big moments rather than fewer big moments. But I'm not sure that I don't think the sport will ever decide to do it. And one of the things that makes it great are these epic battles that everyone falls in love with. So that's the balance you're trying to weigh.
It is. There's times when it's just a dominant player versus someone who doesn't have a chance. It gets a little bit more. But you never know when someone's going to start challenging. Like, the latest is Taylor Townsend. Did you see her?
She's great. And there's this whole next generation of amazing players. Coco Gauff and Taylor Townsend.
She beat the Wimbledon champ. Simone, right?
She did. She beat Simona Halep, and that was Taylor Townsend.
It was so tense at the end of that match when she was trying to finally close. So it can be really compelling.
At the highest levels, tennis is one of the great sports anywhere. It's one of the great businesses anywhere. The big events are some of the great sports businesses anywhere. The battles, the Federer-Djokovic Wimbledon final, are as good as any sports events you'll ever see. The U.S. Open is the highest attended annual sporting event in the world. And so the sport is amazing, and it's very strong globally. Yeah. And I think the key is just to grow it throughout the year and make more events big.
Serena's ranked 8th, but she's probably going to win. I mean, I don't know why she's 8th. And then Djokovic has now withdrawn from every major with an injury at some point. Did that look the other night like he was fine the match before that, but then he wouldn't really talk about
his shoulder been bothering him the whole week.
He's so good and so competitive. When he starts doing drop shots, he never does that. He chases. All right, we'll get to IPOs now. You want to get to IPOs?
I want to talk IPOs.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
SPACs.
Okay, go ahead. Go.
2 minutes here. Tell me, we got
middle of the tournament.
We got Peloton coming up. We have a whole number of big IPOs on the docket.
Yeah.
Would you buy any of them?
Depends the price. So it depends.
That's a fair answer, but
it depends. It depends where they come. I mean, but that really is the answer for me to these companies. I mean, these are really amazing businesses, and it really depends on.
Okay, so is WeWork an amazing business? That's a real question.
There's elements of it that are an amazing business.
Okay, you read S1s though for a living. There's a lot of people look at that S1 and say, "Woo, there's stuff in there that does not that makes them anxious."
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. There are, and even as a customer, we've been a customer of some of our businesses at WeWork, and the rates you get relative to what you can get in other places makes you wonder a little bit about the core economics. But they have a huge platform. It's growing like crazy. And they got to get public. They got to get capital to continue to fuel this growth.
Okay, Peloton. You a Peloton user?
I am a Peloton user. I love.
Would you buy that?
Would
you
the
want the stock too?
I hate to say it really depends on the price. I mean, these are great businesses. I prefer to get involved earlier in a company's life cycle than at this point in a company's life cycle.
You're a SPAC guy, special purpose vehicles. These are blank check companies often. Yeah. What did you make of the Chamath Richard Branson transaction around Virgin Galactic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually a really interesting use of a SPAC because it's a company that probably would access the public markets as well in a SPAC as it would in a traditional IPO. It's also pretty early business, so it'd be hard for it to go public the traditional way. And between Chamath and Richard Branson, I think it'll generate a lot of interest in it.
That's a deal that gets done because typically there's a vote that happens.
It just depends on how much of the proceeds they need to have to close, because you can close them if you don't get all the proceeds, and the vote will happen. The question is how much of the proceeds they'll end up getting.
Proceeds for themselves. You're talking about the promote, if you will.
No, because investors actually can ask for their money back. And so often in deals, you don't get 100% of the cash in trust. You get some of it, but you still close the deal with less.
Interesting.
But interestingly, SPACs, now there's $18 billion of SPACs and 75 vehicles looking for deals. So it's going to be a very robust part of the capital markets for a long time.
Interesting. Mark, thank you.
So who's going to win, Mark, in the men's? You figure it'll be Federer or Nadal?
Let's hope for a Federer, not Rafa final. Never happened at the U.S. Open.
Did you see Wawrinka?
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Unbelievable.
He is hard to bet against Rafa the way he's playing. But just a Rafa Federer final and Serena Andreescu final, and it'd be an amazing weekend.
You think Federer should have not gone with Unique Loan, should have gone with Nike a year later?
Hard to turn down. No, I think it's hard to turn down $300 million for 10 years when you have 3 or 4 years left in your career.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And our thanks to Savita Subramanian, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, for joining us for the hour. Coming up, our guest host for the rest of the show will be Mohamed El-Arian, Chief Economic Advisor at Allianz. He'll help us make sense of the current volatility in the markets. And speaking of volatility, check out futures now. As we head to break, we are looking at the Dow opening 218 points lower, S&P 500 giving up 25 at the open. Stay tuned. You're watching Squawk Box.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow, because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the? Every Tuesday at KFC. Every Tuesday from August 12th to September 3rd at participating restaurants subject to availability.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
I'm getting strawberry notes and a flutter of sweetness without adding sugar. Clever. It is. Yazoo Kids uses a lactose-reduced milk that enhances flavour without adding sugar or artificial sweeteners. Milky deliciousness and packed full of goodness. Very clever. Strawberry Yazoo Kids supports change for life. Yazoo, shake it up! Contains naturally occurring sugars. Milk is a source of calcium, which is needed for the maintenance of normal bones.
I didn't choose you. You chose me. When you broke from the crowd and pawed at my knee, soon you'll be feeling right at home. You'll be a bit unsure, but you're free to roam. What's good to chew? What's nice to nibble? Wet food, dry food, tin food, kibble? You might sometimes be cheeky, not always wise, but I know I found love in those puppy dog eyes. Join the free VIP Puppy Club from Pets at Home for advice and exclusive offers, including 10% off your first shop in store. Visit petsathome.com/puppy club or join in store. T's and C's apply.
New tariffs, investors seeing red this morning with a number of factors affecting markets. We'll break down the latest on China trade, the inverted yield curve, and much more.
Tesla's tax break, Elon Musk visiting China and winning over officials, what it means for the company's decision to stick with its gigafactory there, and the company's stock price.
And tracking Hurricane Dorian. The massive storm expected to wreak havoc up and down the eastern seaboard this week. We're going to tell you what it means for business and industries in its path as the second hour of Squawk Box begins right now.
Live from the beating heart of business, New York, this is Squawk Box.
Good morning and welcome back to Squawk Box here on CNBC. I'm Joe Kernan along with Andrew Ross Sorkin and Melissa Lee. U.S. futures at this hour, equity futures, nothing to get too excited about in terms of if you're long, but we are pulling back a little on the tariff situation, the new ones that were added over the weekend, but manageable, down about 200 points. NASDAQ indicated down 67 and the S&P down 23 or so. The 2-year and the 10-year are, in fact, inverted in the British pound based on their own situation. And the new prime minister, British pound, was at a multi-year low recently.
Here's what's making headlines at this hour. Smile Direct Club has filed an updated statement for its planned initial public offering. The maker of teeth straightening devices is planning to offer stock at $19 to $22 a share. That would imply an IPO value of more than $1 billion, and it values the company at about $8 billion, nearly triple year-ago levels. Boeing could face further delays in restoring the grounded 737 MAX jet to service. The Wall Street Journal reporting Boeing is facing pushback from international regulators who say the jet maker has not provided it with enough details about its proposed software fixes for the jet. And Twitter says the account of CEO Jack Dorsey is once again secure. Dorsey's account was hacked late last week. The hacker sent out a variety of tweets, including some with racist messages. Twitter says the problem stemmed from a security oversight by mobile service provider.
Okay, back to school, back to work. It's we're past Labor Day now. Well, I want to get a look at some of the market-moving factors that investors need to watch this month. Steve Leisman is here to discuss the big week ahead for the Fed, the markets. We get, of course, the jobs number on Friday. But first, I want to start with Eunice Yoon on the latest on the trade front. Big day here, Eunice.
That's right, Andrew, and I'm coming to you from a shop in a part of China that is known as a Christmas village because this eastern coastal city of Yiwu makes roughly half of the world's Christmas decorations. And the manufacturers here have said that for the most part, the Christmas industry has been spared for this year anyway, that a lot of the orders have been priced and shipped. But what they're worried about with this weekend tariffs and more tariffs hitting in December, that next year is going to look bad. Some of them have said that they anticipate that the orders for next year could drop by at least 10%. So this is a low margin business, and with the the confrontation with the U.S., they think, not going away for another 1 to 2 years. A lot of the people that we're talking to here said that they are trying to find new ways to survive this situation. And they have more flexibility than you might think. For a lot of them, instead of moving production outside of the country, there's been a lot of talk about moving to interior, more rural areas within China. One manufacturer told us that in central China, the cost for the land is 1/10 than where I am now, which is in the wealthier coastal area. And also the labor cost there, they said, is about 40% cheaper. So that is one option that's being mulled over here. Another way that they could survive, they said, is by expanding their business even more into other markets outside of the United States. What I found striking was that a lot of the manufacturers said that only 10 to 20% of their sales go to the U.S. from here. So they're looking at Europe, at Latin America, the Middle East as well, because they are looking to try to find other ways to move away from this trade war. Guys?
Okay. Eunice, thank you for that report. We're still grappling with those tariffs. Investors want to watch a couple of other economic data numbers coming out this week, speeches this week. We got a lot coming on. And Steve Leisman's here to tell us all about it.
Andrew, thanks. It is a big data week, capped by Friday jobs report that will tell us about the effects of the trade war on the economy and how much the economy may be slowing overall. Along with a lot of Fed speak, the data guides market expectations for whether the Fed will cut interest rates at the meeting this month. Take a look at the wall here. ISM manufacturing and PMI. Construction spending. I'm interested in this manufacturing. We'll talk more about that in a second. And then Eric Rosengren from Boston speaks. Wednesday, international trade, a number we never used to pay attention to. Now it's like a prime indicator for what's going on in the world and in the United States with, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4 Fed speakers, 5 Fed speakers, Kaplan, Bullard, Bowman, Kashkari, and Evans. Thursday, we get ADP. It's delayed because of the holiday. Remember that. It's not Wednesday. And productivity along with factory orders. Friday, we get the jobs report. And Powell speaking from Switzerland. Now, take a look at the expectations here. The August estimates, non-farm payroll was 149. That may be down because of the big revision we had. Remember, the BLS said, you know what? In the year ending March 2019, there were 500,000 fewer jobs, or about 41,000 a month, fewer jobs created. Average hourly earnings look pretty good. Unemployment rate looks pretty good, 3.7%. And payrolls, ADP expected at 135. That's just the private sector. Now, I want to look at that ISM number. Now, that is not in contraction. Look at the white line. That's the overall number. And that's still above 50. At around 52, we're looking for a 51 and change today. But the export orders, that is contracting along with the import orders. It's an effect of the trade war, perhaps, on what's happening in the United States, along with global economic weakness. At the moment, markets look for the Fed to react to all this by cutting rates in September and October and January, Mohammed, and April. I got 100 basis points of cuts built into the forward
between now and
curve
April.
Between now and April.
Wow.
It's not a little bit, it's a full percentage point, which would bring us down where we did low ones on the Fed funds rate.
Does Powell speak on Friday before or after the jobs report?
I think it comes after, but the speech will almost certainly be written before that. Yeah. I need to check the time on that because it's probably GMT in my so check with me in a half an hour after I convert GMT to EST.
Okay. All right, here to discuss what to expect from the markets of this month, Sarah Ketterer, CEO and Portfolio Manager at Causeway Capital Management. Our guest host for this and the next hour, Mohammed El-Arian, Allianz Chief Economic Advisor. That's a genuine smile. You were only as good as our last victory, right? Yesterday, pretty good.
3 out of 4.
Nice runs, nice offensive production. I told you there would be some spots where I think you're 3 above 500 now with the Mets?
We are
3 above. Reds just anyway. Sarah, let me. I'll start with you because I think I can understand easily what you're saying here. If you have one thing to tell clients right now, it's own value as opposed to growth, and your day will come. Recession or no recession, value's the place to be right now.
Definitely. My colleagues and I believe value is already priced in. It's priced in.
Priced in recession, even.
It's priced in something horrendous. Look at the banks trading in Europe at half a book value or less. They're pricing in a crisis akin to 2012, the Eurozone crisis, or even 08, but with 3 to 4 times as much capital. Look at the energy stocks globally. They're crushed. They trade in the U.S. It's mid-single-digit PE multiples. You could take any value portion of equity markets and find they've already discounted the worst Brexit. They've discounted the trade war. Markets are amazing discounting mechanisms in that respect. So this has to be a great time to buy value, and you get yield. It's ironic that European stocks, so many of the great value stocks, have yields that are 5 or 6% from companies that have plenty of free cash flow. But the bond yields, as you know, are negative in that part of the world.
There's some yields here in the S&P among value stocks that you don't even have to go to Europe to get the 5 and 6% necessarily, right?
Exactly. And will those dividends get paid? That's the question.
Right.
And that's what analysts do. What's what we look for, to see these companies have the ability to cover that dividend and grow that dividend.
So if the market were to enter a bear phase because of a recession, you'd still be able to buy value right now, even if we're facing that. You don't need to worry about buying now, because you figure even in a 20% overall correction in the S&P, these are still cheap enough now to buy.
Absolutely. But price discovery is an important tool, and it's sort of been abandoned with passive investing. But finding companies that have the financial strength, that's what we do at Causeway. We insist upon financial strength. So those companies can weather the storm. We saw them hold their ground through an 2008 crisis, and these meltdowns, they happen. That's what markets are supposed to do. We just haven't had one in a long, long time.
What's the catalyst, though, for the European banks to do better? I mean, and even if you own a bank that you think is a financially strong one, are you comfortable that there would be no knock-on effects if Europe deepens in a recession from a Commerzbank or a Deutsche Bank and the exposure they might have to unknown things like derivatives or whatnot?
Well, a systematic crisis would be a problem. This seems very unlikely given the level of capital. There are certain banks to avoid. You've just mentioned a couple, but there's some great ones out there, like UniCredit in Italy. Italy is considered to be a basket case by the markets, and yet seeing companies completely revolutionize their balance sheet, get rid of bad debts, and get ready to, as the U.S. banks have done, to start returning more capital to shareholders. It's very exciting, and it's certainly not priced into a bank like that, trading at 40% of its book value, less goodwill. They're almost giving it to you on a silver platter. And like, the time to buy won't be after we have a recovery. And what will cause this? Just having rates stop falling. They can't fall forever, and they never do.
What do you think, Mohammed?
So I don't disagree that if you look at valuations, it's absolutely compelling. And you can go further. Look at emerging markets versus the U.S. It's even more compelling, but that's been true for a while. And if you step back and ask, what did we learn over the last 24 hours, before we dive into, Steve, the Fed and the data on the U.S., because there's a lot, we learned two very important things. One is the U.S. is influenced by what's happening in the rest of the world. The dollar strength yesterday, the yields today, it's all about the rest of the world. It's not about us. So we must take into account the rest of the world. The second thing we learned very powerfully is that it's now a complete circle between bad economics and messy politics. It used to be bad economics contaminating politics, and then central banks would short-circuit the transmission back. Now you've seen it in Europe, you've seen it in Asia. It is bad economics impacting politics, messy politics undermining economics, and next thing you know, a global recession, the probability of that goes up. So the only thing I have is not whether it makes sense over time, is when do you put the trade on? Because these macro factors are really powerful.
The key is to put that trade on when the pain is acute, because when we know we're going into recession, those value stocks will start to discount the recovery. This was very much true in late 08, early 09. We saw those stocks move ahead. They were tremendous performers then, and we expect they will be again.
And you don't think, did you see the William Cohen piece in the New York Times this weekend about
only the Fed can save us?
Well, it was only the Fed can save us, which is another conversation from the one I want to have. Okay. Which is that there's all kinds of bodies buried in the debt market, very much the way it was. Now, I think Mr. Cohen has been a bit of an alarmist in some of these regards over time. That said, we know that the banks look pretty good, and that's part of what our guest over there is talking about. However, it's the non-banks banking operations that I think are the things that keep regulators up at night. There are hedge funds providing financing, right? They are designed to create private lending onto different companies. all sorts of things. Pensions are in these hedge funds. How much do you worry about this? That there are bodies buried in the lending market that are leveraged that create a problem if there's weakness in the economy?
So first, I'm really glad you're saying regulators worry about this, because it's taken them a long time to realize that risk has morphed and has shifted from the banks to the non-banks.
From the banks to the non-banks.
You're citing the tip of the iceberg. Look deeper. The proliferation of ETFs on illiquid asset classes. The overpromise of liquidity to the end users. People going way beyond their mandate.
So, Mohammed, though, my question is, if that blows up, what does it mean?
Well, what we're going to see, the good news,
what does that look like?
The good news, it's not in the banks. So it's not a systemic risk.
Like the sickly European banks may be the safest place to be.
Okay, but
absolutely.
But remember one thing: when you overpromise liquidity and the investor can't sell what they want, they sell anything they can sell. We've seen this over and over again. The paper tantrum was an example of that in 2013. So there's contagion risk in the markets.
All right, Sarah, thank you. Good to see you. Mohammed will be with us till 9. You sure?
I am.
All right, just depending on circumstances, how we treat him and stuff.
How you treat him.
How I treat him. He's sensitive.
Be clear about this.
Especially about the Met Jets. Jet nets. Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. Coming up, Hurricane Dorian pounding the Bahamas will get you up to speed on the storm's path when we return. And later, a new warning from Beijing to protesters in Hong Kong this morning after weekend rallies in protest. Stay tuned. You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC.
I'm making brains.
At Romans, you can rent your next home from just £36, plus your first month's rent. No deposit.
No problem.
Romans, your trusted local property experts at romans.co.uk. Conditions and monthly fee apply.
This meeting of the Losers Club has officially begun.
In 3 days, I dreamt of you. It all ends. I craved you. In London. I missed you. Don't miss the final chapter.
We didn't stop it. We can't let it happen again.
Don't miss the end of It.
Hello?
It, Chapter 2. In cinemas Friday. Book tickets from your desktop. Rated 15.
LinkedIn Learning offers more than 14,000 online courses to help you achieve your goals. Its short video tutorials cover business, technology, and creative skills employers look for at every level, all taught by real-world industry experts. And new courses are added every week. Plus, LinkedIn Learning is personalized, recommending courses based on your interests and skills. Start your free trial at linkedinlearning.com. Cancel within the first month to avoid any charges.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow. Because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the? Every Tuesday at KFC. Every Tuesday from August 12th to September 3rd at participating restaurants subject to availability.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
Let's get an update on Hurricane Dorian. NBC meteorologist Crystal Clyde joins us now with more. Crystal.
Yeah, Melissa, the latest on Hurricane Dorian, still parked in the same area. You can see on our satellite imagery, still a fairly well-formed eye. That means the cloud tops are still there. And this is still a Category 3 storm. It has weakened in winds down to 120 miles per hour and been stuck over the same part of Grand Bahama, pounding parts of Freeport with the southern eye island. And take a look at our radar imagery, and you can see the difference here with our radar picture. It no longer is looking quite as solid as it was yesterday because it's been parked over the same area. Churning up cooler waters means that it is starting to weaken, and that's why we're seeing those winds drop down a notch. That does not mean that we are in the clear in terms of those dangers, especially to the U.S. So let's take a look at the latest track, and you can see this is actually an outdated track, but the latest track that we'll get to in a moment will show off that we are looking at trends that will have it riding up the East Coast. Let's talk about our biggest threats out there instead, so we can look at some of the concerns moving forward. Again, as this will actually be riding up the East Coast moving forward. So Florida, the biggest threat is going to be storm surge. We're looking about 4 to 7 feet. For Georgia, the biggest threat also looking around storm surge issues around 4 to 7. And then for the Carolinas, we're talking storm surge. The concern now with the latest track, there could be a clipping along the Carolinas, especially near the Outer Banks, where in addition to storm surge, we are talking the possibility of hurricane force winds. And that is something we'll be watching closely for the next several days. That's the latest on Dorian.
Okay. All right, Crystal. Thank you, Crystal Cly.
Thank you for that. When we come back, a lot more on Squawk. The CFPB releasing the results of a new study on saving for tax time. You don't want to miss this. We're going to discuss the results and talk financial empowerment. We're going to do it right after the break. In the meantime, check out shares, or rather, I should say, check out the futures right now. Dow looks like it would open down about 200 points. S&P 500 looking to open down 22 points. Squawk returns right after this.
This CNBC program is sponsored by...
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our Red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our Mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow. Because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the... Every Tuesday at KFC. Every Tuesday from August 12th to September 3rd at participating restaurants subject to availability.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
From the moment I saw you, the last of the litter, I knew you were the one, and we'd soon hear the pitter-patter of tiny paws on our kitchen floor and tiny scratches on the bedroom door. You might sometimes be mischievous, sometimes be shy, but I know I found love in those kitten cat eyes.
Join the free VIP Kitten Club from Pets at Home for advice and exclusive offers, including 10% off your first shop in store. Visit petsathome.com/kitten club or join in store. T's and C's apply.
Strength and things. Strength and things. Strength and things. Strings and things. Strings and things and strings and things. Strings and things. Strings and things.
Now there's a whole range of strings and things called strings and things, including cheese strings, yollies, and new cheese shapes. Find them all in the cheese and yogurt aisle.
Strings and things.
Welcome back to Squawk Box on this Tuesday morning. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau releasing the results of a pilot study called Planning for Tax Time Savings. The study was launched in 2015 with H&R Block and shows that simple messages encouraging customers to use their prepaid card to save at tax time increase the likelihood that they would end up doing so. For more on the study and how consumers can use CFPB resources to save, we are joined by Kathy Kraniger. She is the director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Good morning.
Good morning.
So tell us about these prepaid cards. What do you mean by this? What do people have to do?
So what H&R Block did during the 2017 tax season was send an email to some of their prepaid card customers and just have a simple message that says, do you want to save? Here's how you can do it. So they added a savings feature to the prepaid card to let people save money along with their tax time refund.
Typically, do most people not? I assume most people don't save enough, and they get hit at tax time, and they don't realize what they're really getting hit by.
This is actually the opposite situation. 73% of people actually get a tax refund,
right?
And for 40% of the tax filers, that's the largest influx of funds that they have personally every year.
So that is their version of savings.
That is their version. That is at least the time to save. And so the opportunity to really think about that, given what you deal with throughout the year in terms of other emergencies or issues that come along, building that habit of savings when you know that you're about to get an influx again of funds, it's a good time to have that as something on your mind.
Right.
When we say people mostly spend their refunds, are we assuming that they're not paying down debt when they're spending those refunds? So this study didn't answer that particular question, but there is definitely, I think in society in general, the spend message is loud. And what we want to do is get that savings message out there as well. Did a great study with H&R Block with a randomized control sample of those who got the message, those who did not get a message. And the savings results were there. If you put the thought into people's minds, they're going to actually take action with it and empowering them to do that. And that's what the savings tool did. I mean, there were other people saving, I'm sure, as a result of tax time who just didn't take advantage of that particular feature, but it's still a great reminder.
So, Kathy, that's one of the many insights of behavioral finance, that if you tweak things, you can change behaviors in a meaningful way. Why is it taking so long for these insights to make it into policy, to make it into mainstream?
That is an excellent question. I would say this study perhaps gives you an insight into it. We started conversations with H&R Block in 2015 for the 2017 tax filing season, and here we are in 2019 able to report the results, which, by the way, 24% of the people who were involved in this actually saved 8 months later, and they had an average of $105 saved. And again, for those who make under $50,000 a year, that's a great nest egg and something that will help them get through a financial crisis.
Right. What do you worry about most these days for consumers? Just in terms of your day-to-day job, when you think about the risks that are out there for the public?
It really is, I think, a buyer beware situation from the front end of things. We can't be there with consumers all the time. There is a lot of fraud. There are a lot of scams. I was just talking off-site with someone about that today in terms of the things that they should be aware of. And we're there. We're actually taking action and enforcement actions, and we're vigilant. But we can't be everywhere with everyone.
What do you feel? How do you feel about all of these online sort of new entrants into the savings robo-advisory game?
They're a great opportunity, again, to make people think about this, to take action on it, but not without some risk.
Since we're talking taxes, and I know we got to go, would you ever advocate, I don't know if you know my view on this, advocate for a single card that just you pay your taxes, it comes from the government, you don't even have to do anything? I know it's antithetical for certain people on certain sides, certain parties about doing this. You know what I'm talking about? But I want to make it very easy.
But I'm probably against it if
you would be against it. You are against it. I know you're against it. Okay. No, this would just be a simple card. You pay your tax. It's done. The government effectively sends you a bill.
Yeah.
So you don't have to. So for majority of Americans,
moving without a forwarding address, they wouldn't find you. How would you do it?
No. You'd get back to get it. We gotta go. We gotta go. Thank you. It's great to see you. Really
Great to see you too. Thank you.
No, I'm for it. I'm with you.
For more on some savings tips and other things, you can check out cnbc.com/investinYou. It's a multi-platform financial wellness and education initiative that CNBC is doing in partnership with Acorns.
Ted Cruz.
Focused on improving Americans' money knowledge in the areas of saving, spending, and investing. NBC Universal and Comcast Ventures are investors in Acorns.
Flat tax?
It's not
like
a flat
Ted
tax.
Cruz flat tax?
No. It just means that instead of...
I can get behind that.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
Oh, found one of our new Vauxhall Griffin editions.
Yes. What comes as standard?
Standard? Well, alloy wheels, sat-nav, aircon, DAB radio, Bluetooth, smartphone projection and USB connection.
Wow. Is that everything?
Sorry, forgot the colour touchscreen.
Buy a new Griffin edition, Adam, Astra, Corsa or Mocha X Plus and get a whole host of features as standard. The Griffin edition range. All Griffin, no bull. Visit your nearest retailer now. Vauxhall, British brand since 1903. Participating retailers only. Limited units while stocks last.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow. Because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the... Every Tuesday at KFC. Every Tuesday from August 12th to September 3rd at participating restaurants subject to availability.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
A lot more coming up on Squawk Box this morning. Let's tell you what's about to happen. We got Elon Musk making a trip to China and winning over government officials there to get a break from tariffs. We'll discuss what it means for the company as it gets ready to open a gigafactory there. We should also talk about that Wall Street Journal op-ed today about Tesla and some of those tax credits. Also, Hong Kong and your money, how violent protests in Asia's financial hub could make or break a trade deal with China. And we're closely monitoring the latest forecast for Hurricane Dorian, which is currently churning in the Bahamas, but is now expected to move up the East Coast this week. Shipping, travel, and other industries expected to be impacted by the storm. The latest all coming up. Squawk Box returns with that and more when we return.
There's golf.
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying, all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
At Romans, you can rent your next home from just £36, plus your first month's rent. No deposit.
No problem.
Romans, your trusted local property experts at romans.co.uk. Conditions and monthly fee apply.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. with the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
From the moment I saw you, the last of the litter, I knew you were the one, and we'd soon hear the pitter-patter of tiny paws on our kitchen floor and tiny scratches on the bedroom door. You might sometimes be mischievous, sometimes be shy, but I know I found love in those kitten cat eyes.
Join the free VIP Kitten Club from Pets at Home for advice and exclusive offers, including 10% off your first shop in store. Visit petsathome.com/kitten club or join in store. T's and C's apply.
Tesla CEO Elon Musk recently traveled to China, and he returned with a tax break for the electric car maker. Musk met with China's transportation minister while visiting Tesla's new Gigafactory being built in Shanghai. The announcement of the tax break came after that meeting, which pushed shares higher on Friday. Here to discuss Tesla and China's impact on the company, Colin Rush, senior research analyst and managing director at Oppenheimer & Company, and Craig Irwin, senior research analyst at Roth Capital Partners. Guys, good to have you with us. Colin, I'll start with you. This is good. It's the 10% tax that foreign vehicles face, but at the same time, China's going to increase auto tariffs overall in December. So this is a small offset, no?
It's a small victory short term for them in terms of some of the near term sales. I think it's a small boost. You know, ultimately, what they're doing is ramping capacity in China where they'll avoid all of these taxes, and that's really where they can see some real benefit from that relationship. And I think this is a nice to have, but and a small positive, but not a huge deal for them.
Does it look to you that the Model 3 production promised by the end of the year is going to happen?
You know, it looks like they'll start. You know, and we haven't expected them to have real volume. It's just modest test runs, and we think they'll definitely get that this year. They're ramping on schedule, and next year is a really important year for them as they move into a year where they need to ramp and really show some of the operating leverage that they promised the street.
Mm-hmm. Craig, you've been bearish Tesla for a long time. So, what are you going to say about this? This tax break that they're getting.
I got to give Elon credit, right? This is an environment where we're seeing U.S. and Chinese tariffs put in place left and right. And here he gets a reprieve from a 10% tax credit. Treatment very much like a domestic Chinese automaker. That's a big deal. So it might be, I agree that it's minor from a financial standpoint, but it shows that they're approaching things correctly. It also shows that there's, in the bigger picture, actually green light out there, a good potential outcome as we look for constructive ways to work with partners.
Does this make you a little bit more bullish on the Tesla story, knowing that his relationship in China looks, at least at this point, to be a pretty good one?
So, if you look at the longer term for China, the fact that they're going to be paying $323 million a year in taxes after 23, that shows they're looking at a fairly serious ramp in China. They're expecting a fairly serious ramp. He has done basically what he said he would do as far as sales of the S and the X and the 3. They might not have been at the trajectory he wanted, but we're going to see something similar in China. I think we're probably going to see some success with a couple 100,000 cars out over the next few years. And that would be a big deal. That would be positive, and it'll probably end up being their most important market.
You sound like you're getting more positive on Tesla. Are you?
Well, fundamentally this year, I think we need to see what happens with the Taycan. So the Porsche Taycan launches next Tuesday in Frankfurt, at the Frankfurt Auto Show. There's already 20,000 announced orders there. You could really see Porsche do very much what it did with the Cayenne and then the Macan. So order numbers there doubled and doubled for a couple years. it could be very interesting.
Policy question for you. This is in the Wall Street Journal this morning, the op-ed, subsidize my electric car, please. As you know, for so very long, Elon Musk actually said that once the subsidies went away, it would actually help Tesla, hurt everybody else, because the 200,000 car limit, which was the tariffs, or not tariffs, but the subsidies roll off after 200,000 cars. Tesla's already had that, so has GM. Now they're asking for the next 400,000 cars, and Elon Musk has jumped on board for that subsidy. Does that make sense? And do you think we should be subsidizing these cars at this point?
I do. I mean, if we're going to facilitate a technology change in the auto industry, there needs to be some support.
The Journal would say this has been going on for 30 years, though.
And we're supporting innovation in all industries across sectors. So there's no real change to the policy there. What's happened, which is fascinating to me, is how slow the auto industry has been to actually invest in this sort of change and actually fulfill this. It's actually much harder.
Do you think there's something fundamental that's beyond just about either the technology itself or about the cost of
I think there's multiple reasons. One, the technology is harder than people give it credit for. Two, the cultural issues in these organizations in terms of innovating and actually needing to innovate. And then the fact that they're playing the field. They're hedging their bets with hybrids and other technologies, and so they're not committing. And Tesla's done one thing right in terms of committing to a single technology and going forward in that and kind of forcing themselves into innovating to survive. And even though that's hard short term sometimes, over the long term, I think it is going to pay dividends.
How much does demand increase? I mean, right now it's rolled off, right? So they reached 200,000, so it's half, and it'll have at every milestone. What is the math on if we extended it by $7,000 per vehicle for the next 400,000?
I mean, for Tesla, it's just margin at this point. I mean, they really don't have serious competition right now from a product perspective. Consumers want the vehicles, and so for them to get this tax credit is just pure margin for them. And I don't think that makes that is a mistake for them.
I ask a question. You just said there's no competition. There's no competition. Maybe if you're talking about straight EVs that are in this particular area, but that assumes that the buyer of a Tesla is doing it for all of these reasons. And wants an EV, wants a high-end luxury EV, sure, but that's...
High-end luxury is the hook. The only place
I think it's a mid-range luxury. It's not high-end luxury at this point.
The only place I see the nice Teslas are really rich neighborhoods. I can't believe those people need
$45,000, $50,000. It's
no, the $150,000.
The market is already fading for them.
If you polled a Tesla owner today and said, did you buy this car because it was an EV, or did you buy this car because you just loved the car, you loved the handling,
luxury car,
all the other features? What percent would say it was because it was an EV? That, to me, is the fundamental question around Tesla.
I think it's a false question to try and separate it into both things.
Why?
I think they can buy it for multiple reasons. Like, they bought it because it's an EV and it was a cool car.
What should we not subsidize? Anyone's pie-in-the-sky idea of transitioning to what the future should look like? I don't understand. Should we subsidize Solyndra? Should we subsidize all wind power if it never becomes, why are you laughing at that?
Because we're subsidizing the oil industry as is. I mean, let's talk to you. I mean, what industries shouldn't we subsidize and what should we subsidize? I mean,
that's a good question. I mean, we can't subsidize everyone, just not the ones you like and think that, are going to eventually help.
It's not just me. I'm saying we need to innovate in the economy and support that, and that is an across
industries.
industry.
Is pretty well innovating in general, though, doesn't it? Typically? Does it do okay?
It's done decent, yeah, of course. But we're subsidizing industry.
There are some problems when you subsidize there. I mean, you can go over to Europe and look at certain energy that's been subsidized over there that shouldn't have been probably, and people are paying rates that are much higher than they should be.
To the earlier point, though, I mean, Colin, you yourself said that if we had a further subsidy, it would just mean gross margin for Tesla.
Without question at this point.
Because people already want the car. So then there's not a need. That's not a need for subsidy.
It's not driving demand, but it is helping the automakers.
But if it's not driving demand, you answer the question. If you poll a Tesla user, how much of it is about the EV component versus all the other factors?
None of it. I mean, people are buying the cars because they like the cars because Tesla's making great cars, and that's why I agree with Colin that basically this is just going to be something that helps Tesla on the margin. I personally hate subsidies, right? I don't like picking winners and losers, from a federal subsidy or a state subsidy. I think the right thing is to let the free market decide. And there's buyers for these cars, and that's the big deal is that there's buyers for EVs at a range of price points from 25 to 125 or 225, and this market is real and it's growing today, and we should let the market work.
All right, Craig, Colin, thank you.
Coming up, protests in Hong Kong turning violent again this weekend. We'll discuss Washington's response to the situation and the ties to getting a trade deal. Checking out the futures. At this hour, we continue to trade lower, but we're not down 200. We're down 195 or so on the Dow, 60 on the NASDAQ, and a little over 20 on the S&P. We're coming right back.
Can you customize the S&P 500 to meet your...
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
No. No. No.
What are you doing?
I don't like any of our preset radio stations. We need a new car.
With the Jaguar E-Pace at $299 a month on personal contract hire, you'll find a reason.
That's better. And it's a Jaguar.
Initial rental £3,588. 48-month term. Subject to status. 8,000 miles per annum. Excess mileage and return conditions apply. No ownership option. Ends 30th of September. Participating retailers only. Jaguar contract hire.
Strength and things. Strength and things. Strength and things. Strings and things. Strings and things and strings and things. Strings and things. Strings and things.
Now there's a whole range of strings and things called strings and things, including cheese strings, yollies, and new cheese shapes. Find them all in the cheese and yogurt aisle.
Strings and things.
Protests yet over the weekend in Hong Kong. Police using tear gas and water cannons on protesters. NBC's Chris Livesay joins us this morning live from Hong Kong. Chris, good morning.
Morning, Andrew. That's right. You know, we are now in the 13th week of these anti-government protests here in Hong Kong. They don't appear to be going anywhere. In fact, they're only getting more violent. Over the weekend, we saw more clashes between protesters and police. Police pulled out a water cannon, shot protesters with blue dye. It's the first time we've seen that. It's to mark them so they can be identified later. We're talking about tens of thousands of protesters who turned out to the streets regardless of a ban that the government had imposed. And things got a little bit ugly. They threw Molotov cocktails at police. Police responded with tear gas. In fact, they chased them down into a subway station at one point, hit them with their batons, sprayed them with pepper spray, and they got some innocent bystanders. That's according to Amnesty International. Meanwhile, we're getting some ominous signals out of Beijing. The central government there saying that, quote, the end is near for these protesters. Now, they didn't specify how the end is going to come about. They just issued this statement through Xinhua, the state media organization. So now everyone's wondering, are they going to resort to drastic measures? Meanwhile, protesters, they keep turning out to the streets by the thousands. They were out there today. They're probably going to be out there tomorrow. Andrew?
Chris, before we let you go, what's it like day to day in terms of the business that's just happening around town, around the city, the banking community, all of the different industry that's there, the expats? Are people going to work? I mean, is it business as usual or not really at all?
Well, it's definitely been bad for business. I mean, the tourism industry has suffered. That part, yes, not to mention, I mean, the airport. That was a key location of the protest just recently. They used luggage carts to create barricades and battering rams, both to fight with police and to snarl traffic to and from. We saw passengers and travelers having to get out of their cars, push their suitcases up the expressway because traffic to and from the airport was just completely gridlocked. And this is all to get the attention of the central government here and get the central government to stop bowing to pressure as they see it from Beijing. Andrew?
Okay, Chris, thank you for that report. Appreciate it.
All right, joining us now to discuss China trade and Washington's response, Judd Gregg, former Republican senator, former New Hampshire governor, Heidi Heitkamp, a former Democratic senator, and CNBC contributor. More importantly, I know she throws that around even more than the Senate thing, Senator. Good to see you both. Hey, Judd, you've written recently about, we know what the Democratic Party stands for, but you're wondering, what does the current Republican Party stand for in terms of, the deficits are pretty large. There's tariffs, there's protectionism, there's a trade war. In your view, with what's happening in Hong Kong right now, what would a classic Republican president do in terms of whether you try to help the protesters, try to calm the situation, try to give support to President Xi, not give support to President Xi? How should we be behaving there, and how's President Trump doing?
I have to admit, Joe, I'm not an expert on Hong Kong, but I think the classic Republican response should be, we're for people who want to pursue liberty and people who want to pursue freedom and have the right to speak and do what they believe is correct in their government. And if they're shut down by an autocratic government, we should stand up to that government, obviously not militarily in this situation, but we should stand up and say, listen, we have ways of not dealing with you that can hopefully influence your decisions, and use those ways. But as a very practical matter, this is not a situation where I think we're going to have much influence if the Chinese government decides to use military force.
That's what I mean. But Heidi, I don't know how you, Senator, I don't know how you think we should be responding, whether we should be more strident about warning or whether it's a delicate situation. You don't want to necessarily, incite something that where you're actually being pointed at for the reason things deteriorate. What's the right, it's a fine line.
But historically, as Senator Gregg said, historically we've stood for democracy. We've stood for people's right to speak out. And we believe the world gets better when those rights are exercised across the globe. And if we stay silent, there's some complicity to that I think doesn't speak to American values and what we hope will happen in terms of the future of global order. Liberal democracy across this globe is under attack, and if we simply allow erosion at every step, and especially in a situation where people are trying to take a step forward, but the options are limited. I mean, you can condemn the actions. I don't think that you can simply say it's none of our business. I think it clearly is our business. It's the world's business. And if something is done in Hong Kong that is horrific in the vein of Tiananmen Square, I think we have to be standing for people's right to speak out. It's interesting, Joe. We're attacking China for their trade policies, but they also have huge human rights violations.
But it factors in, all this is the backdrop of when we're in a trade war, and when the president says President Xi is a wonderful man and we're great friends and he's reasonable, if things were to go south, as you said, how do we enter into a trade pact at that point with someone that'd be like, what happened? Should we stop buying oil from Saudi Arabia? It's hard to take economic interests and juxtapose them with human rights interests.
Well, I think we have to be really careful with sanctions.
Thanks. Judd, what?
Well, I think you have an issue of purity of purpose. I mean, the simple fact is this is a very complex world. China is 1.3 billion people. That gives them 1 billion more people than we have. They're going to be our competitor, and hopefully somebody we can work with for as far as our eyes can see, and from a domestic and international standpoint. And so there has to be a nuance to how you approach the government like that. I mean, they are an autocratic government. They did have Tiananmen Square. We have gotten past Tiananmen Square, but we certainly didn't do a whole lot to mitigate Tiananmen Square relative to pursuing human rights within China. Rational policy is required when you're dealing with a country that's 1 billion more people than you have, and they're going to influence the world politics. So I don't think there's any clear path here. I think you sort of continue to stress the fact that we're for people having the right to say what they want to say and have freedom and have liberty. But recognize that we don't influence this situation in a significant way.
Isn't that the key issue, what you just said?
which is there is no clear path. If China were to intervene militarily, then we would have a clearer path. But in the interim, with China not intervening and with the protests getting more violent, isn't the right thing just to sit back? I'm not sure what the U.S. or anybody else could do at this stage other than watch this and try to figure out the multiple scenarios out there.
Well, I think we can make it clear to the Chinese that a military intervention would create a massive disruption in our relationship with China. That we should have made very clear, very distinctly, so that if they pursue that path, they know there will be a significant price to pay. I mean, obviously, we have this trade war going on with China, but there's dramatically more things that could happen which would reduce
Senator, I agree with
China's
you,
influence.
But the question I would ask then is, what do you think the options are for the Chinese to solve this?
Well, I think the options for the Chinese are to allow Hong Kong to continue to govern the way that they were agreed to be governed when they separated from England and became basically a protectorate of China. There's a clear authority that was defined that was going to be left with Hong Kong. And the Hong Kong government has basically backed down on that authority and allowed China to take people out of Hong Kong into China to be prosecuted and do a number of other things which were not consistent with that authority. And so I think the answer here is that you have the Hong Kong government say, we're going to act within the context of what was the agreement when we separated from England.
That would require the Chinese government to compromise. Heidi Heitkamp, do you think that's possible?
Well, I think that China is desperate to become the dominant economic power. You can't do that by alienating with your actions the rest of the world. And I think Europe will react. I think Central America and South America will react as they look at what a Chinese-dominated world would look like if it's going to oppress people. That's not a good look for the Chinese moving forward in their goal to become basically the dominant economic power in the world. So we have to speak with the unified voice. And I know I've said this over and over again. Alienating our allies in this very tough fight with China has not been a very successful policy for this administration. It's time for everybody to come back together and talk about what the world's going to look like when we engage with China, not just on trade, but on these issues of human rights. There are also huge human rights violations as it relates to the Muslim population in China that's really going untalked about. And so I don't think we can look at China economically without looking also at their domestic policies that are, in fact, very contrary to Western democracy and Western values.
Well, you know, I have to agree with Heidi there, and I think she's talking like a Republican used to talk, like we used to talk as a party, which is that we built alliances. That was the whole Eisenhower theory. That was the Reagan theory. It was the Bush's theory. This America First, America Only approach, which has undermined our alliances with natural allies, which are democratic governments across the world, simply isn't good in the long run and leaves you pretty much alone when you have to confront somebody like China.
All right, we got to end it there, Senator. Thank you, Senator Heitkamp and Governor Senator Gregg. And Senator Heitkamp has an op-ed out on CNBC.com this morning. It's titled, "Protect Pensions Now for Millions of Americans." You can read that at CNBC.com/investinYou.
Coming up when we return, the president taking to Twitter and urging automakers to leave China and bring production back to America. Senator Gary Peters of Michigan joins us at the top of the hour to discuss this. And we're tracking Hurricane Dorian as it slowly churns in the Atlantic. A look at the storm's track and possible business impact is straight ahead. Squawk Box, be right back.
I heard you guys have Workday now.
Yeah, they're a great partner.
LinkedIn Learning offers more than 14,000 online courses to help you achieve your goals. Its short video tutorials cover business, technology, and creative skills employers look for at every level, all taught by real-world industry experts. And new courses are added every week. Plus, LinkedIn Learning is personalized, recommending courses based on your interests and skills. Start your free trial at linkedinlearning.com. Cancel within the first month to avoid any charges.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at Tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
I'm getting strawberry notes and a flutter of sweetness without adding sugar. Clever. It is. Yazoo Kids chooses a lactose-reduced milk that enhances flavour without adding sugar or artificial sweeteners. Milky deliciousness and packed full of goodness. Very clever. Strawberry Yazoo Kids supports change for life. Yazoo, shake it up! Contains naturally occurring sugars. Milk is a source of calcium, which is needed for the maintenance of normal bones.
I didn't choose you, you chose me. When you broke from the crowd and pawed at my knee, soon you'll be feeling right at home. You'll be a bit unsure, but you're free to roam. What's good to chew? What's nice to nibble? Wet food, dry food, tin food, kibble? You might sometimes be cheeky, not always wise, but I know I found love in those puppy dog eyes. Join the free VIP Puppy Club from Pets at Home for advice and exclusive offers, including 10% off your first shop in store. Visit petsathome.com/puppy club or join in store. T's and C's apply.
Here we go again. A new week, a new month, and another big plunge for futures as new tariffs on China take effect.
Preparing for Dorian, we're starting to get a better picture of the powerful storm's impact on businesses.
And Uber's wrong turn. As the company's stock hits an all-time low, we're going to pin down the tipping point when the story started to change for tech's ultimate disruptor. The final hour of Squawk Box begins right now.
Live from the most powerful city in the world, New York, this is Squawk Box.
Good morning and welcome back to Squawk Box here on CNBC, live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Joe Kernan, along with Andrew Ross Sorkin and Melissa Lee. Becky is off today. Our guest host, Allianz Chief Economic Advisor, Mohamed El-Arian. Futures right now are indicated lower. I haven't gotten one comment about us being in a completely different set, on a completely different floor, with a completely different look, and it just shows you.
What?
It's all about us. It's just...
People are so focused on
They're
your
so
personality.
focused on your personality. It's
and
got
the
nothing to do with... We could do this...
Anywhere.
Right.
Anywhere.
This is your set. Thank you for letting us...
You're welcome.
For lending.
I expect the check in the mail.
Do people come in and, like, sterilize it when we're done before we...
I hope so.
I figured you'd say that. Anyway, let's look at the futures are down. They're down but not out. Can I say that? They're down 226 points. Big week in terms of rebounding last week after that couple of scary days, the prior week before that. Remember, it's hard to keep it all straight. Just one tweet away from something else happening, probably. And there we are on the 2-year, 10-year is still inverted, but just slightly. A big piece in the journal today about, I don't know, it's the rise of the machines. It's people doing things based on stuff that they do at certain points, depending on where yields are, and it may or may not. And if you said that a while ago, that doesn't necessarily mean.
So I tell you what's interesting about technicals. It's in the old days it was technicals you explained. Now it's about algos, and look at the algos that are focusing on Twitter now, and looking for words, and then starting to move markets, and then people get sucked in. So this market gets amplified by these technical factors that we have to take seriously.
But even if you're an insurance company, or if you have assets where you need to deploy them for whatever reason, and it can't be in stocks, I mean, do they really have any choice not to buy U.S. bonds? So I mean, that kind of explains why we still have people buying 30-year bonds at under 2%, right?
Yeah, I mean, the 10-year in Germany today, all-time low of minus 73 basis points.
Right.
So, of course, we're going to attract people. And if you buy into my thesis that has worked out, which is the dollar is going to get stronger and stronger, you get both the yield and the currency effect.
Okay, we got a number of big stories that investors are going to be talking about today. I want to get you through a couple of them. Smile Direct Club has filed an updated statement for its planned initial public offering. The maker of teeth straightening devices planning to offer stock at $19 to $22 per share. That would imply an IPO value of more than $1 billion, and it values the company now at about $8 billion, nearly triple year-ago levels. Anybody ever here wearing Invisalign? Invisaligns? No Invisaligns?
We had a big piece last week on this.
We did. We had a
huge piece.
I
was like in shock because we talked about it for like 15 minutes. Really.
Huge business.
Is it?
It is. And now not just orthos are doing it, but dentists are doing it, which is also creating a rift between the dentist
and orthodontic.
So
it's much cheaper than the big orthodontist thing, and it fixes.
But the orthodontists are very upset because the dentists are now basically trying to get in on their business by doing this.
So you would have been a big asset to this conversation last week, right?
Look at my pearly whites.
For me, I was thinking about different parts of the world that may or may not be a better market for. You know where I'm. Certain places where, and then I was thinking about my own
your own teeth
diastema that I never fixed.
We could
do you think I should? Would there be?
Sure, why not? Now you can just do it. So
did Lauren Hutton? Did Lauren Hutton?
Keep it.
Did Madonna?
It was a
Did David Letterman?
Signature, Joe.
It's a signature.
At this point.
At this point.
So you're so perfect. I don't even notice your teeth. Is that what you want? Is it better to be just totally conforming?
I have my own idiosyncrasies.
Oh, you do?
Yes, I do.
You do.
Other news this morning to tell you about. Hong Kong's leader says that she's never asked the Chinese government to let her resign. The city chief, Carrie Lam, made the comments following the most violent protests we've seen this past weekend. Police used tear gas, water cannons on demonstrators. It was the 13th straight weekend of pro-democracy protests. And listen to this one. Twitter now says the account of CEO Jack Dorsey is once again secure. I don't know if you saw this last week. Dorsey's account had been hacked. The hacker sent out a variety of tweets, including some ones with racist messages. Twitter says the problem stemmed from a security oversight by a mobile service provider. So there's a little bit of intrigue about what exactly that means.
Yet another escalation in the U.S.-China trade war taking place over the weekend. The countries hitting each other with a new round of tariffs. Kayla Tausche joins us now with the latest. Kayla.
Good morning, Melissa. Those new tariffs from both the U.S. and China went into effect Sunday, further escalating tensions between the two countries and calling into question whether those in-person talks will in fact happen later this month. Officials from Beijing and Washington held a call Thursday night in which China claimed progress in halting fentanyl shipments, according to three sources with knowledge of the call. And China again asked for relief on tariffs. But without that, China's fighting back, launching a WTO complaint, lowering prices on consumer goods like appliances, and easing traffic rules that restrict purchases of new cars. Meanwhile, here at home, Labor leader Richard Trumka, a one-time supporter of President Trump's trade agenda, said that support among his members is faltering.
I think it's a good thing taking on China. Unfortunately, he's done it the wrong way. To take on China, there has to be a multilateral approach. One country can't take on China to try to dry up its overcapacity because they just send it through to you in other ways.
President Trump firing back, tweeting yesterday that Trumka likes it until the cameras are on, saying no wonder unions are losing so much. Andrew?
Okay. Thank you, Kayla. What do you make of what's happening here?
I don't know why it's a surprise. I mean, if you look at the U.S. domestic situation politically, if you look at the Chinese, both of them call for escalation of trade tensions.
Right.
We'll get the occasional ceasefire, as we did when President Trump said that the talks were going to take place at a higher level. But that's just a temporary ceasefire. But the underlying dynamics is for escalation.
So, but what's the timing there? If that's the case, then do you short everything? I mean, how do you play that?
Well, I don't know if you want to.
I don't know when you say escalating. What does that even look like?
So it will be more tariffs on both sides until we get to the election. I look at this.
Why do you say that till we get to because you think it plays well?
Because I think the Chinese
politically,
I think the Chinese made a fundamental and very unusual strategic mistake right up front. They didn't follow the example of Canada and Mexico in understanding that the right thing to do is you diffuse tensions quickly. And because they waited, in the US, this issue went from being just about economics to being about economics and national security. And the minute that happened, it makes resolution much more difficult. So now the Chinese are looking at this, having made the mistake, and for them, the most obvious thing is wait till the election, wait to see what comes out.
Andrew, that was another piece over the weekend that some of President Trump's closest advisors aren't even looking at this as an economic issue anymore. That it's a national security issue. And if we've had Steve Bannon on. I mean, it's like we need to counter this threat now, or
the question though politically is because it could cut both ways, right? There's a base that might say there's a national security issue, and we support you on that front. But if the economy turns south as a function of all this, and it gets articulated as a tax on Americans, then you might have a different view, right?
If in Trump country, if you've got silos full of grains, rotting because we're not exporting them, that doesn't help probably either, right? I mean, some of the farmers that were on board, that slowly, you're seeing those numbers slowly going down.
At the same time, Mohammed, why do we assume that the Chinese, I mean, if that's your calculus in terms of what the Chinese are operating under, why do we assume that it's only going to be a tariff retaliation on the part of the Chinese? I mean, I feel like people here assume it's going to be tit for tat. We put tariffs on, they put tariffs back. They're going to run out of stuff to put tariffs on. And they have a whole battery of potential tactics that they can use.
Oh, absolutely. And there's already been a ton of non-tariff restrictions on both sides. Companies are facing all sorts of difficulties right now. Yes, no, absolutely. And that's why another element of this, even if a peace was declared tomorrow, I bet you that U.S. companies will continue to look about diversifying their supply chains. That this is a permanent change in how people think about globalization. And I think that's really important because we are used to looking at financial markets in terms of a globalizing world, ever more globalizing. Right now, we've either pressed pause or even slow motion rewind on the globalization process.
Meantime, I want to continue another political component of this story. President Trump taking on General Motors in its relationship with China on Friday, teasing the automaker for not being as strong as it once was and accusing GM of having moved plants to China. Now, the tweet getting a lot of buzz because, in fact, GM has never moved a factory from America to China. Right now, I want to bring in a lawmaker who has a unique perspective on trade, the auto industry, and the American worker. Michigan Senator Gary Peters is here. He's the ranking member of the Homeland Security Committee and also serves as the Commerce and Joint Economic Committees. Good morning to you, Senator. What did you make of that tweet, and what do you think the American public should think?
The president continues to put out these kinds of tweets, and instead of really having a coordinated manufacturing policy, my focus is how do we make sure that we can make things in America, that we have a strong and vibrant manufacturing sector. We're not seeing that kind of help from the administration. We need to be focused on some of the areas that the government can be really helpful in the industry. One thing that I see here in Michigan as I travel all across the state, folks are looking for skilled workers that can be working in our plants. That's something that we need to be focused on. We can't be in a situation right now where we have tariffs by tweets, so we have disruptions, we have folks who don't really have any certainty as to what the future is going to hold. It's creating a very difficult business environment here in Michigan.
Senator, political question, and I don't know if you had an opportunity to hear the conversation we were having at the table just moments ago, which is the idea that the Trump administration has really determined that this battle with China is as much a national security battle now as it is an economic one. Do you believe that?
Well, certainly we do have to be concerned about the Chinese. They are a competitor, and we need to hold them accountable. And if we enter into trade agreements with China, we have to make sure that the rules are actually followed. But we also have to understand that when you have robust economy, that is national security. Having a strong U.S. economy is directly tied to our own national security as well. And that's why we need to have forward-thinking economic policies that understand the complexity of the world. If you're looking at tariffs, that's certainly a tool that you use when you are putting together a comprehensive international strategy. Right now, the president seems to think tariffs are a strategy by itself. That's never been the case, and it's not going to be that case going in the future.
What are you hearing from your constituents when it comes to these tariffs?
Well, I think people are going to start feeling more of them. In fact, if you look at some of the economic studies that have come out, now with these new tariffs going into place, it's going to start hitting consumers. It could be as much as $1,000 per household. And I'll tell you, $1,000 per household is a pretty big hit. And that's going to ripple through all sorts of industries here in the country.
Senator, specifically when it comes to the auto industry, last week China announced that it would be increasing tariffs on U.S. autos by 25% to 40%. How should we think about that? I mean, most cars are built on the ground there and so may not face the brunt of this tax. At the same time, you know, what sort of impact are you anticipating in your district?
Yeah, right now, I mean, certainly with General Motors, you know, most of the automobiles that they produce there are ones that they sell in China. So that's not going to have that impact, although Ford Motor also sells cars from the United States. They export to China as well, so it's going to have some impact. But I think it's the overall impact throughout the entire supply chain that we're worried about, and the kind of disruption and uncertainty that this creates really doesn't make for a very healthy economic environment. And I think you're starting to see some of that slowdown in the manufacturing sector broadly in this country right now. That may be a leading indicator of what's going to happen going forward.
Do you wish GM, the cars that it's building in China, they make Buicks, Cadillacs, I think they have 4 plants or so. Do you wish that those were still made, and do you wish they'd move them back and do the production in your state?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We would want those cars made here in the United States and then exported to China. That should be the goal. There's excess capacity with manufacturing sites here in the United States now. We'd love to be able to do that. But I think we're going to need to have a comprehensive manufacturing strategy coming out of this administration and a policy in order to make that a reality.
That GM never moved a plant there. Maybe they didn't specifically move one that was in production here or there, but they definitely are. They build plants and automobiles in China.
They did, yeah. They built those plants in China for the Chinese market.
It's their big market.
Some cars are coming back.
Yeah, it's their big market. I mean, I understand it, but you know, GM's got a lot of problems. Why, you know, if they sold more cars here, maybe it wouldn't be such an important market for them, and they got to give people the cars they want. Once again, we're back to that, you know, 10 years after the bailout.
Right. And we want to have more of those cars. We want to try to bring back more of the production from Mexico as well to the United States. I think most of us are very disappointed that the new Chevy Blazer is being built in Mexico. We'd love to have that in the United States. We need to have that continued focus of filling plant capacity with cars that are being built here in America.
Hey, Senator, before I let you go, we were having another debate last hour about Tesla and EVs. And specifically, there's an op-ed in today's Wall Street Journal talking about the subsidies that have been made available for EVs that roll off or at least get halved after the first 200,000 cars are sold. That has now rolled off for GM in your state. It's rolled off for Tesla. But the industry is back asking for those to be continued to now for the next 400,000 cars. Would you be in support of that?
I am supportive of that. We want to continue to ramp up production of electric vehicles and to bring them to scale. We have legislation to do that. The EVs will become more economical and will be able to be sold to a broader cross-section of America.
What do you make of the argument this is going on? These subsidies have gone on for 30 years now.
Well, you're seeing EV production now catching up from a technological standpoint with the internal combustion engine. When we move to self-driving vehicles, AVs, those are all going to be EVs as well. They're going to be electric powered. But you need to be able to scale up and mass produce these cars. That takes a substantial investment. Right now, these cars are more expensive. You can't get to scale. But when you get to scale, the market forces kick in and you become very competitive and have a much more competitive product. But you have to get to scale, and getting to scale is often difficult with a new technology.
Okay, fair enough. It is a longer debate, Senator. We always love having you. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Great to be with you.
Appreciate it.
Coming up, Uber's wrong turn. The company is coming off a big second quarter loss, its stock hitting all-time lows, and it's still recovering from some arguably deeper corporate issues. When we come back, we're going to talk to a journalist who's been looking very closely at when the narrative around Uber changed and what it can do to get back in the right lane. Stay tuned. You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow, because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the... Every Tuesday at KFC. Every Tuesday from August 12th to September 3rd at participating restaurants subject to availability.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
Strength and things. Strength and things. Strength and things. Strings and things. Strings and things and strings, strings, strings and things. Strings, strings, strings and things. Strings, strings, strings and things. Strings and
Now there's a whole range of strings and things called strings and things, including cheese strings, yollies, and new cheese shapes. Find them all in the cheese and yogurt aisle.
Strings and things.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. The futures down over 200 points. Last time we looked, down 223 now, down 67 on the NASDAQ. The S&P indicated down 23 points this morning.
Okay. Uber has consistently made headlines since it shot to prominence earlier this decade, from breathtaking valuations to corporate intrigue, and recently its big IPO that didn't live up to expectations, at least so far. We're now only getting some of the first-hand accounts detailing the company's meteoric rise in a new book that's out today. Super Pumped, The Battle for Uber. It's a fabulous book, and I will say so myself. I've read it. Joining us is the book's author, Mike Isaac, technology reporter at the New York Times, takes you all behind the scenes of the past, I don't know, what, decade, Mike?
About 10 years, yeah.
Inside the room, you really feel like you were there with Travis through all of the machinations, him getting pushed out. It has a remarkable sort of narrative propulsion. So here's my question for you, though. Having now studied Travis and all that he brought to the organization and the sort of hard-driving mentality, and now Derek Khosrowshahi, who's in that role, brought in large part because that hard-chargingness, which might have helped the company in the beginning, was thought to have not, and that you needed somebody else. There's now a new narrative saying that you might need a a Travis kind of guy on the other side.
Yeah.
Do you believe that? What do you think right now?
I mean, I think after 2017, which was like explosions going on around the entire building and just everyone needed people to chill out for a minute, Dara seemed like a good pick just because he was basically drama-free. He was like a numbers guy under Barry Diller at IAC for a very long time, just sort of very steady as she goes CEO. I think that has kind of worked to calm things down, but some folks are kind of questioning whether he's maybe a little too chill, if that makes sense. You know, like maybe some of the early employees really credited Travis with this ability to drive a fire inside of employees in the company. And I think when you have competitors in all of the markets around the world, that's something you might need.
So you write the following. You say, this is a former employee, I believe you're quoting. Is Uber going to be an Amazon, a company that dominates in every sector it branches into, or are we going to be another eBay?
Yeah.
What do you think the answer is?
Look, they love to call themselves an Amazon right now just because Bezos for years trained the street that you can go on razor-thin margins or even negative, report negative quarterly earnings and still be okay. Uber is not exactly an Amazon quite yet. Last quarter they lost some $5 billion, although some of those were like one-time charges. And they have a long way to go to still prove that this platform thing that they're doing is really more than just their core ride-hailing business.
What have you talked to Travis since this book came out? Because I'll tell you, he paints. I mean, Travis. There are moments where Travis looks great, but there are moments where Travis looks terrible.
Yep. No, no. He is not. He did not participate or cooperate.
You do, though, have there is a chapter, I don't want to give it away, spoiler alert, towards the end, where you run into Travis.
Yeah. It was in the comedy of errors that is my life, I ran into him outside of the courtroom when they were on trial, Uber versus Waymo, when Waymo was suing Uber. And we had a moment, we talked, and I said it would be off the record, but there was this moment before he went into the courtroom and was sort of like ready to go inside, ready to just sort of give his side of things. And he still looks like he's always going to be ready to fight for that next thing. That's what he's doing in his next startup.
What was it? You would report on this aggressively for the Times throughout. So what was the big surprise for you?
In the reporting for the book?
In the reporting for the book, right.
Yeah. I think the funny thing is that everyone I spoke to really has this sort of mixed feelings about Travis, like as problematic or complicated of a person he is. Like, he also took the company very far in the early days. There's a big argument for, would this company be the same without him? Could we have even built it? The incumbent sort of that wouldn't let other transportation players in, would they have still been there without Travis? So I really think that everyone has mixed feelings about him as a CEO.
Does Dara need a little bit of Travis in him? I mean, judging from the last earnings call where he sort of let the narrative pervade that, there was not a path to profitability, and especially when you compare it to Lyft's call, which happened the day before or 2 days prior. Yeah. I mean, people were much more comfortable with the Lyft story in terms of their path to profitability.
Yeah, it's really hard because Lyft is just by nature a smaller company. Sure. It's not fighting as many wars as Uber is across the whole world. And the wonder is, do you need like a wartime CEO all the time if you're going to be, across multiple continents? And I don't know. I think that it's weird because I think we kind of forget the trauma of 2017 and how gnarly it was under Travis, but there's a case for maybe he needs to be a little bit more of a fighter.
Mike, we can't let you go without going back to the Amazon versus eBay. In 3 years' time, you have to answer this question.
Oh gosh.
Is it more Amazon or is it more eBay in 3 years' time?
3 years' time. If they can pull out from beyond just a ride-hailing business, if they can do food delivery well, if they can do bikes and scooters, if they can actually start making money.
Is there something else, by the way, they could do? Is there some other thing we don't even know about?
I mean, yeah, what is that other next product? Retail delivery stuff? Like, I don't know. That's stuff that I don't think they fully know quite yet. Payments is something that they're sort of dabbling into, so I would look at that. Maybe if they can pull that off, maybe it's the next Amazon. Okay. That's a big maybe.
Mike Isaac, it is the book of the fall. It is out today. It is called Super Pump, The Battle for Uber. Great to see you. Congratulations.
I want an Uber digital currency. They, if
they're part of the Libra.
They are Libra. They don't need their own then. Well, that's not going anywhere, so maybe they should have their own. Anyway, coming up, new details out this morning on Smile Direct Club's hotly anticipated IPO, and it's an important month for central bank decisions around the world. Will the Fed and others make it a September to remember? We're going to talk about what's at stake when Squawk Box comes right back.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow. Because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the? every Tuesday at KFC. Every Tuesday from August 12th to September 3rd at participating restaurants subject to availability.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
Hurricane Dorian is now a Category 3 storm. The hurricane is stalled over the Bahamas and continues to pound the island chain with relentless rain and high winds. U.S. cities and towns are now getting ready. Contessa Brewer joins us now with more. My fingers are sore from keeping them crossed, that it just stays off shore. I feel awful for the Grand Bahamas, but what's the latest on the track, Contessa?
Well, the track is that it is supposed to stay right offshore, but the problem is this storm has been highly unpredictable, as you know, Joe. And in fact, the National Hurricane Center says that just now it has started moving at 1 mile per hour. So now Florida's bracing for Dorian's impact with hurricane conditions expected by this evening. Mandatory evacuations in place in counties in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. Seaports closed. Rail service suspended. UPS and Uber have suspended service in some places. Almost 1,400 flights canceled. Airports in Orlando, Palm Beach, and Fort Lauderdale closed right now, though Fort Lauderdale is considering reopening. Miami remains open. In the Bahamas, the storm is still lashing the islands. At least 5 dead. The impact so severe, initial estimates are 13,000 homes gone. Salt water is filling wells, infrastructure, communications, power lines, roadways just devastated. Freeport is the industrial center. It got slammed, and tourism,